Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace. It's Tuesday at 1 p.m. on Twitch, and we hope that you are joining us for this live broadcast of the show. I'm Shane Satterfield, the host of the flagship show for Sifted Games at sifted.net, and alongside me today I have Matt Kyle. What's going on, Matt?
Same as always.
Have you started to crack yet?
I crack periodically. It's more, I bring it back around after a few minutes, you know.
Yeah, the cracks are definitely starting to show in America at this point.
That said, I don't want to go to the beach right now.
No. Yeah, it's looking like everything's kind of starting to break down at this point. So it's crazy times we're living through, but thank God for video games. They are a great escape away from all this stuff.
It's nice to be frustrated by something else once in a while.
And I wish I could tell a story right now about that very thing. I've been playing a game over the last few days that I can't speak about yet that has been really giving me fits.
I think next week.
You'll hear about that definitely on next week's show on Tuesday. Also with us, we have Mitch Sikorsky. What's going on, Mitch? How are you?
Pretty good. I did forget. I have a clarification for you, Shane. I actually do play fighting games. I love Super Smash Bros. Oh, that's the thing in college we used to solve every dispute was Super Smash Bros. So I'm good at Melee all the way up to Ultimate. So
he does the bros thing. Yeah, I hate that.
And Mitch is neck deep in building his PC as a part of our other show, Sifted HQ. How's that going, Mitch?
It's going good. I mean, parts are coming. It's really nice to see all the parts actually in my hands, seeing how big things are. And but I'm really excited. I'm really hopeful everything gets in time this week so I can be able to post something for HQ into next Tuesday.
Yep. So anyway, this is GameFace. This is episode 212. We got some big stories to talk about today, but we do not really have a lot of big games. So this episode might be a little bit shorter. We'll see how it works out. And as always, if that is the case, we'll definitely take some more questions during Q&A. We are 100% supported by Patreon. So if you're listening on Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts or anywhere else where our podcast feed seems to have just been leached out, or GameFace is on a bunch of services that we did not sign it up for. I don't know whether to be happy about that or not. But anyway, however you're getting the show, if you could head to patreon.com/sifted and kick us $1 or $2 every month, we'd really, really appreciate it. We do appreciate every single dollar that we get. So anyway, with that, let's get on with the show. We're going to kick things off with Ghost of Tsushima, a game that came and went like a ghost during the last 3 years since it's been announced. We get a little scrap of something, and then it would disappear for months, and we get another little scrap. But now the game is nearing release. It launches July 17th. No, is that right?
It sounds right.
Yeah, it's in mid-July. And now they're starting to ramp things up. Up until now, we had really only got a gameplay segment that showed off the combat and a bunch of trailers, and a little bit of exploration in that gameplay as well. But we really didn't know how the game played, what the gameplay loop was like. Didn't really know much details about it at all. All that was fixed this week when Sucker Punch dropped an 18-minute guided tour of and now I've learned how to say it, I believe, Ghost of Tsushima, I believe is how they were saying it in the trailer.
Correct. Once they did say that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how to say it. I've probably been saying it wrong all along. But
I mean, vowel pronunciation in Japanese varies tremendously, and there's even weird little dialect things. And there's a thing where if you say the U in things too pronouncedly, that's a more feminine or cute way of saying things. So you'll hear male speakers a lot jump over the U in words. Yep. So that's why Yakuza would be more as I understand it, would be more of a cutesy way to say it. And that's why you're generally going to hear it as Yakuza. Yeah. You barely even say the U. So Tsushima is an actual place. So I assume there is a common pronunciation for it. But which syllable is stressed in Japanese can vary by person sometimes. Yeah. So I don't know. feel like Tsushima is fine. Tsushima, like I'll probably adjust my pronunciation to whatever the game uses over
that's
time.
probably how it'll all play out. And one of the things about it is it has a Japanese voice track.
I figured that was going to be there. Yeah,
and they encourage using that, which is interesting.
Yeah, and the basically the Kurosawa mode with like black and white and everything.
Yeah, the Kung Fu movie mode is what I call it. Before we get into the nitty-gritty details, and there are a lot, and we're going to discuss this game at length here because this is really the first time we got to see what it is. But before we get into that, let's just kind of talk about our overarching opinion of the game after seeing this 18-minute presentation. Matt, how do you feel about it? More excited, less excited?
Probably a little more. Like I like the wind thing.
Yeah,
it's very cool. Like I mean, we were all wondering how they're going to do this without waypoints, and it feels like they came up with a pretty elegant solution.
Yeah. For those of you that haven't seen it, you use the wind and the mist as your waypoint indicator. Basically, whatever direction the mist is blowing, that's the direction that you need to go.
The divine wind.
Yeah,
and like I'm into that, and the samurai combat looks. I mean, the sneaking combat looks pretty much Assassin's Creed-y.
Yeah.
But the samurai combat, I think there's a lot more to that than they were letting on in that because it seems very timing based and very reactive. And I liked everything I saw about the sword combat in that, up to and including calling people out for like a duel kind of thing. And how fast it was and how instant the kills were and how
two swipes when you played
like
as,
you're not hitting people with a foam sword. Like it's a deadly weapon and it looks it, and they have that kind of the over dramatic, like, old Chambara movie deaths where they just sort of stand there and spray blood as they fall over. And so that's all really cool. Like I like all that stuff. Yep. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of what I thought it would be. It's not a revolution in anything, but I like a lot of what I'm seeing. I was talking to someone who didn't dig it. They're like, oh, it looks like it could have been made in 2013, mechanics wise. And I don't agree with that. I don't think you get this game without Assassin's Creed Origins and Witcher 3 in place already. Yeah. But my reaction was sort of like, it's an open world game with a lot of like variants on things we've seen before. But like, what other open world samurai game am I supposed to play? Because for some reason, you'd think we'd be up to our eyeballs in samurai open world games, but they don't happen. Like Ubisoft refuses to make it, and like the Japanese companies you'd think would be into that shit, but they didn't. Like it's weird that
if you focus tested it, probably the vast majority of people that you would talk to would be like, "That's pretty low on my totem pole for content for a game." Just my guess.
But like I think it makes sense in terms of like a sword fighting thing.
Sure.
Like it feels like there's a lot of games like that sometimes, but like there aren't any. It's a very fresh setting for an open world game. So.
I mean, Sekiro comes to mind.
Yeah, but obviously. Sekiro's not open world.
Yeah, I mean for sure it isn't. But as far as kind of how the combat works, the vibe of the game, pretty. Yeah,
simple. I mean, I think there's definitely some Sekiro light in the combat here, but also like one of the things that I think is the most appealing about Ghost to me is there's no supernatural stuff in it. Like there's no monsters and ogres and weird things like that.
It's serious.
It's just an historical game, and like I don't have a problem with like mystical supernatural stuff in this kind of thing. Like Sekiro did it really well, but I find the historical adherence to be refreshing, especially in an era where like Assassin's Creed has kind of rejected the historical element. You're fighting centaurs and cyclopses and stuff, which is cool. Like I'm super into that. It's
into mythology, basically.
Yeah. The Animus lets you do that and not violate any reality. Basically, it's a freeing tool for it. But if they really are going to stick to like just a historical setting, like I'm into that. Like people don't do that much in these things.
Yep. Mitch, how about you, man? How do you feel after you've seen this big chunk of gameplay?
I mean, I'm sold more than ever before. This game looks amazing. The stream did not do it justice. If you watch the stream, go and actually watch the YouTube video because the quality is so much better visually. The game's stunning. I listened to an interview with the creators. I forgot their names at Sucker Punch at the moment. But they mentioned the combat is all about short moves, and it's not it's not going to be a long process. It's all about you only have 2 shots, and that's what you're going to get.
Yeah, you can see that in the video. As a samurai, 2 swipes and each enemy's dead.
And that's intentional. I think that's fresh in combat because, like you guys said, something like Assassin's Creed, you're taking down someone's health for a good 5-6 minutes. I like that. I like those elements. The wind is a cool element because it's a natural thing that they already focused on, but just emphasize it in a new way, and it makes it a little more fresh. The black and white, I'm definitely doing a second playthrough just in black and white with Japanese and subtitles, because it just, the care that this game, you can really tell the developers put a lot of care into this game with all the minute, finite details from the colors that you can do, from nature. They're just adding so many elements to this game that I'm just excited to play it.
Yeah, I will say this. It might be the prettiest game I've ever seen. No hyperbole. I'm not even exaggerating. Like, it might be the prettiest video game ever made. I love how in that presentation, they know. So they stop and they'll just let the horse stand there and just let the scene happen. They do it like 4 or 5 times, and it's gobsmacking. To Mitch's point about the details. Oh my gosh. Like, you can see why this game has taken so long to create.
I'm also very impressed by the physics on his little cape, his cloak.
Yeah, I thought that in some of the scenes it looked a little overdone, but wind is a big part of the game, and so I think that's kind of
you want it to be there and visible like that.
Yep.
And also a lot of stuff in this is overdone. Like the heightened element of the combat and the deaths is going to be a thing. So I dig it, and I'm sure you'll be able to, they showed off some of the customization of his outfit. And I'm sure you can. It's like, you don't like that kind of cape, you can have a different thing that flaps in the wind. Obviously, it's not on the level of what we saw in the Unreal demo, but we're not there yet, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it looks good. I just thought it looked a little off kilter in a couple of the scenes that they showed, where he was inside, and it was still going kind of crazy. The one thing I would say that I was a little surprised at, that I wasn't pleasantly surprised by, is the game is a bit derivative. And I don't know what my expectations were, but the game's been in development for a long time. It's had the benefit of seeing all these Assassin's Creed games and all these other open world action adventures or action RPGs. And it doesn't look like it learned a whole lot from those as far as evolving the genre. Also, going back to what I was saying earlier about, I wonder how big the interest in something like this is going to be. Sekiro sold pretty well, though. So, at the very least, it's going to do okay. I just don't know.
I think Sony stuff is going to sell like crazy no matter what.
Yeah, I don't see this hitting over 10 million, though.
I think it will.
Do you?
Yeah.
I don't know.
If Days Gone can make half that, this can do 10.
I think it'll be a challenge for him to get there. I guess I would put it that way.
That's not a guarantee. It's not going to be like a God of War runaway thing. But I can if it's good. If it's something that you'd put in the hands of, if it's like God of War or Spider-Man, something, or Horizon, something you'd put in the hands of anybody willing to hold a controller, then I think it will sell on that level.
Yep.
Over time, maybe not instantly, but by the time the dust settles on holiday this year, I could see it being in the 10 million range.
You mean by the end of the year, 10 million?
Once lifetime stuff is calculated.
I think lifetime it'll hit 10. I think in his first year, I think it probably gets close. We'll see. But regardless of that, I'm 1,000% in. Personally, I'm really excited for this game. I don't really give a crap about its commercial appeal. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to play great video games. And that game looks freaking awesome. The combat, I think, is probably going to have to grow on me. As you know, I'm not one of those guys who likes life or death combat where you get struck a couple times and you die. I hope it's not as punishing as games like the Souls series. I don't think it will be.
I can't imagine they do that for a game that they want to sell like this. They expect this to sell. Also, there doesn't seem to be, from what I could see, there doesn't seem to be a stamina meter. And
that's true.
That's your real
You're
downfall.
right. Yeah, that's it. That's my Achilles heel usually, for sure. Let's start going through some of these details, though, because there was a lot that was shown off. And as I watched it, I took notes. So I have a bunch of stuff that I wanted to get to. One of the coolest things I thought about the game, and one thing that does set it apart a little bit, is how it uses nature. So I don't know if you noticed, but when you ride the horse in this game, it's at an offset camera angle. The horse is always to the side of the screen. So you can see, I don't know how that's going to work if you have to do combat on horseback and stuff like that. But for cinematic reasons, it's amazing. And there's one shot where he's riding along a fence line, and this bird starts flying along beside him, and then the birds start gathering, and it's this like little mini flock of birds like flying along beside him. He gets up to the tree line, and there's a fox, and then the fox ends up taking him to this shrine for this collectible. So I like how they're integrating the creatures of the island into the gameplay, and also into the waypoint system a little bit, kind of like how the wind is working. So
like it's nice. I like when he finds the fox den. Like my Far Cry playing ass was like, oh god, how many fox pelts am I going to need to craft? But it says like, oh, the fox will lead you to the shrine. I'm like, okay, I like that. But like arbitrary animal murder doesn't seem to be like.
Yeah, you're a friend
element here,
of the animals instead of an adviriary, and I like
and
that.
The birds lead you to things, and
it's cool. Yeah, I really like that.
It's a cool organic way to do it. Like the minimal HUD is working for me. I don't fully understand why his life bar is made of tennis balls, but whatever.
That's something that could be easily fixed if people decide that they don't like it. That's
just a slightly different color on the dots is all. It's that tennis ball green yellow neon color that's on it right now, and I don't know if it represents something, but all I can see when I see that is he has like 12 tennis balls left.
Yep. And then there are the RPG elements, and they've been kind of rebranded a little bit for this game. It's like so the shrine that the fox takes you to gives you a minor charm slot, and that is one of the ways that you can upgrade your character. But there's also there was that whole other system with crafting. While you're riding a horse, you can just snag stuff that you need for crafting. So there's a crafting system. It seems to be checking most of the boxes.
Yeah, I think it's at least going to be as robust as like a Far Cry.
Yeah,
in terms of those elements.
Yep. I don't know if I'm a fan of studios just giving their own kind of nomenclature to stuff that's like things in other games. It almost kind of needlessly complicates things a little bit, but whatever. As long as the systems are there, I'll figure it out and it'll be fine. And then the customization in this game is huge. Like that was kind of the biggest surprise to me of stuff that was there that I didn't think was going to be there, was how the customization works. And the customization actually kind of ties into the leveling and improving your character, because the armor and the stuff and the customization, it gives you mechanical advantages that will suit how you want to play. So again, it's kind of like Souls, although I'm guessing it doesn't go anywhere near as deep, as far as being able to build a character that you will be happy playing with and not kind of forcing weapon X, Y, and Z on to each player.
It's I assume you'll be able to swap armor sets, just because you're gonna have a ghost outfit, you're gonna have a samurai outfit, you're gonna be able to change clothes up for whatever the situation demands. And I don't know if that's gonna actually be a thing, because I find in games that let you do stuff like that, I tend to just sort of find an outfit or armor set that does what I want it to do, and then I'll just deal with it. If I am in a situation that is not ideal for that set of clothing, I'll just fight through it. I'll just get through. I don't know which one I'll do. I feel like I will probably be more samurai in this than ghost, just because the samurai aspect looks more unique than the ghost. I've done the ghost.
We didn't even actually mention that, which is a big part of the game, is that you're essentially kind of playing two characters. You're playing the samurai and the ghost. The samurai is the honorable character, and as we said earlier, just a couple swipes of his sword kills at least the rank and file enemies. The ghost, you have a lot more abilities with the ghost. After that presentation, I was like, it's hard for me to see why I would want to play the samurai, because the ghost is kind of, first of all, isn't it like the evolved form? You don't have the ghost form at first, and then you have to use those abilities that you collect, those charms, to get to the point where you can then become the ghost. I thought that's what I heard.
No, I think it's just the charms are just enhancements for abilities. I think you can do either thing whenever you want. There is no switching.
Oh, I think you have to develop new techniques before you can become the ghost.
I'm sure there's a point at which you are introduced into sneaking around and killing people dishonorably, because that is not a samurai behavior.
Right.
But I don't think there's a ghost mode and a samurai mode. I think you're just using particular abilities or sneaking. I'm sure you click a button, click the stick, and you crouch down or something.
I don't think it's that.
Yeah, I don't think it's that divided. I think you can switch. You know, and he was, you know, he stealth killed a guy and then threw the thing. But I'm sure if you don't throw a kunai at a guy in time and he comes at you with a sword, you fight him like you fight in a samurai match. Yeah.
So how do the character models work? Do you think you just look like the samurai, but you're doing the stuff that the ghost does?
Huh?
So when they showed the samurai demo, he looked like a samurai. He had traditional samurai garb. When they showed Ghost, he looked like a ninja.
Yeah.
So you're saying if you decide the armor that you want to wear looks like a samurai, you're still going to be able to do all the stuff that Ghost does and why you look like the samurai.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Except I bet there's probably like a noise element to it. You know, like if you drop down onto the deck in like full samurai armor, I imagine they would hear you in a way they wouldn't.
That would be cool if it has that much.
In a way they wouldn't hear you if you were wearing like the ninja footy socks kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So why wouldn't you just wear the ninja footy socks all the time?
Because I want to walk into that camp and just take everybody down like that.
And be big and bold about it, you mean?
Yeah.
I get it.
I mean, the ghost approach seems to probably be more efficient, just in terms of like minimal impact on you versus like killing everybody really fast without, you know, risking yourself. But like the samurai thing, the samurai demo part was really cool. It was badass. So that's more interesting to me right now. But we'll see what I think is more fun when I actually play it. Like I don't know. What, you know, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy, as they say.
All they really showed with the samurai was swordplay. But with the ghost, they showed using fear as a weapon, like intimidating the enemy, using stealth with the dagger, using firecrackers for distraction. You can chain together executions. You can use a smoke bomb and assassinate. And then they said that like eventually, based upon how you play, the Mongols eventually learn to fear the ghost. To me, playing as the ghost, way more interesting than playing as the samurai.
I just don't, because the samurai gameplay is new and this ghost gameplay is like every other stealth game I've ever played.
That's true.
I mean, I'm sure I'll switch between them as is appropriate, but like the idea of like walking into the camp and just being this like stone wall that they just crash against is cool, especially if the combat looks as cool as it does and is fun. Like we'll see, you know, but I like the idea of a lethal sword. I like the idea of kind of taking this sort of Sekiro counter idea and turning it into like man walks into enemy camp and just says, "Come at me," because like
I like that too. Yeah, I
that's
can
the
get
stand up fight, you know, and I dig it. The ghost stuff looks fun too. It just looks more like what I've done before. But we'll see what I end up like. You know, I have a feeling that there are going to be camps that you're just. I mean, you can try the samurai approach if you want, but I feel like there's going to be guys that just can hand you your ass if you don't know what you're doing.
And that's the other thing. Like Assassin's Creed, there is a lot of sort of base invading where you go in, you take a stronghold, and then, you know, you own that portion.
They're not reinventing the wheel on sort of the open world ideas here.
Yeah, the design is very, very familiar.
But like I always say, like execution is way more important to me than innovation, and Sucker Punch executes every single time.
Yep.
So what you call the customization is interesting to me too, because I don't think they've ever really done that before in a game.
Well, there's also that whole flower system where you can color your armor using flowers.
Yeah, dyes.
Like,
that's cool.
It's crazy. Yeah, there's some cool stuff in the game for sure.
Yeah, that's just not been Sucker Punch's MO. Like, you know, like the infamous games didn't have a lot of outfit customization. You know, like your character looked like how he looked for the most part. So this is kind of a new step for them, and I'm interested to see how that turns out.
Yep, and then the final stuff was the photo mode looks insane. Like maybe the craziest photo mode ever.
Now that is a Sucker Punch trademark at this point. Like the infamous games had really good photo modes.
Yeah, you can select like the music that plays. You can like adjust the particles in the shots, so you can create more leaves or more dust or more wind if you want.
There was also speaking of the music, there was a Shadow of the Colossus flavor to some of it, which I really liked. Like
I agree.
There's nothing like, I'm not going to claim this is going to be like the winner for most innovative at the end of the year, but like there is nothing in here that I don't like the look of. Like it's solid. It's still up there with Cyberpunk as my, tied for my most wanted game of the year.
Okay. I wouldn't put it that high for me, but to me right now, the way it's shaping up, it's certainly looking like a must buy for core gamers for sure. Mitch, what closing thoughts do you have on what we saw of Ghost of Tsushima?
I like it all. Everything you guys say, I 100% agree with. I think enemy camps may have showed it this time around, but I'm not sure or sold that that's going to be everything they're going to offer. Their past games have shown a lot of variety in extra side missions that you do. So I feel as if that's going to happen with this game, and they just wanted to show something that everyone can relate to, which is taking an enemy base. The only other thing I could say that we missed on details, the samurai, you can shoot a bow and arrow. So that was one thing they did show.
Yeah, he does have a bow.
And then the, oh my lord.
The bow and arrow, getting hit with the arrow looks like it hurts.
Yeah.
It looks like it's like one shot kills.
Yeah,
There's
the arrows are like 4 feet long. So, yeah.
They're like an inch thick. Yeah,
they make
huge.
their impact. And then the other thing was that the samurai has 4 different stances. So it's similar to a Neo type style. You saw it on the right-hand side of the screen when he was doing combat, that he was switching from a tall stance to a low stance. They said that will affect certain enemies differently. And I'm kind of interested in seeing how that works compared to usually the higher stance is more powerful or the lower stance is more speedy. And it really doesn't change how you would play against an enemy with stances. I never really had to. But if it forces me to, I'd be interested to see how that works within the combat.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to the combat they didn't show here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can just tell by watching like 10 seconds of it. Yeah,
I would definitely expect a deeper dive into the combat between now and launch.
I think we're going to get a lot more deep dives on this game because they have been kind of stealth, as far as marketing it and promoting it. And, they're coming down the home stretch. They're 2 months away. So
2 months, and they have to keep visibility above Last of Us 2 to some degree, because that's a 800-pound gorilla in the Sony lineup. So you gotta keep people interested in this other thing that's coming a month later. And I'm sure, given the situation we're all in, we're not going to be passing on anything like that.
Yeah, I think they'll do fine.
Oh yeah,
I think they'll be working very hard to kind of keep visibility on this game moving forward, because they spent a lot of money on it. It looks great, and you want people to also pick that up in addition to Last of Us 2, because they'll probably be done with Last of Us 2 by the time this comes out.
Yeah, the last thing I was going to say was the last time I remember a fear mechanic in a game was when I played Batman Begins for, I think it was PlayStation 2. And that was an interesting mechanic in that game. And having that element here, I'm really curious to see where it goes. I know they kind of showed off the guy falling in fear, which kind of sold your masculinity in that moment of being a badass. But I'm really curious of what elements you can do, whether that you can like make something move in the distance and it freaks them out and all of a sudden they scatter, or just
wait. I don't think there are any supernatural powers, are there?
No, in a sense of maybe he like throws something, it explodes, and some things fall off from a building. Practical.
Yeah,
things.
It just makes them nervous. Like that's also been in the Arkham games to some degree. Definitely in the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. Like there was you could become strong enough that you would doing like the execution kills would scare the orcs around you and they'd run. You can
do cool stuff with it for sure.
Yeah, it depends how deep they dive in. Like Batman Begins is probably the most detailed use of it. Like it was the whole point of the ambush system was if you did this Splinter Cell style ambushes in Batman Begins correctly, everyone would be so afraid of you would have no resistance, and you just take everybody out before they could move. Which is fun when it worked, but it didn't work all the time. It is an interesting idea. That's also an appeal, I think, of the samurai system as well. Is people be afraid of the ghost because you have a reputation. I'm sure, because I think you saw that a little bit in the ghost section of the demo, where it's him. They knew, because obviously you. I'm sure there'll be some kind of rep meter or some kind of, as the story progresses, you become better known.
And a lot of games do that, but usually it's when you go back to town with all the winnings from your adventures, and they're like, "You're great, welcome back, you did awesome."
The old Fable style.
Yeah, where they're all congratulating you when you come back. So it's pretty rare for it to be the opposite, where people cower from you in fear. So I think it could be really cool. I think the whole game sounds really cool. Still, though, my big concern is the subject matter. Will it have a wide appeal? The core, I think, are going to gobble it up, though. I think it's going to be a huge success.
I think a solid, well-executed open world game doesn't matter.
Yeah, in some ways it can transcend.
It's like Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is going to be probably the biggest single seller of the year, outside of maybe Call of Duty.
Yeah.
it's Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk stuff doesn't sell. Like that's like basically like common like it's common sense at this point. But Cyberpunk is also the most talked about video game on the internet. Whenever it has a new demo or a new thing, like just putting that car up this week, like Twitter exploded on it, And for whatever reason, this thing is hitting the zeitgeist and it's going to be a big deal. So I think just, Tsushima.
It does look exciting, though. I'll say that. But whereas Ghost of Tsushima, I think it is in danger of being labeled as boring if the plot isn't really good. I think they can probably deliver on that. I'm just
I think
saying.
it depends what the advertising campaign looks like. If you make that look interesting, if you really lean on kind of the sword fighting and the
action,
the kills, like because like that stuff like triggers a certain thing. I think in a lot of people. And it's not a thing you see in games that often. Like that kind of like lethal sword combat is sadly rare.
Like once a year, roughly. It seems like we get one. Yeah.
So I think it has a good shot. And
I think it's going to be a success.
Weirder games have been big hits.
That's true. Katamari Damacy. If it can sell like 10 million, this game absolutely can. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about a story that we had wrong. That we talked about on GameFace in the past. We've been talking about Mafia 4. There were all these hints coming from the studio. There were some leaks saying that Mafia 4 was coming. As it turns out, it was literally everything but Mafia 4 was coming. So the first 3 games, they're calling it a trilogy. I don't think anyone called it that until now. The first 3 games... I
think we just called it the 3 Mafia games.
Yeah, exactly.
They're basically completely unrelated to each other.
They are, yeah. And so the first 3 Mafia games are being, I guess the blanket term I could use is re-released because each one is being handled a little differently. So the first Mafia is getting completely remade from the ground up, and it needs it. The first Mafia, I think, is kind of hard to play now. There wasn't a lot of action. The open world part of the game was kind of like an illusion. It was a backdrop. They didn't use the open. They built this beautiful recreation of New York from like early 1900s, and they didn't use it for anything except driving. Like all you did was drive from mission to mission. There was no open world stuff. There were no collectibles. There was no reason to explore the world. At the time, it was kind of cutting edge. Like it was. Yeah, I remember. I was like, "Ooh, I can leave the house and get in the car and drive away."
Well, also just the character animation was high level for the time. I remember being very impressed by the cigarettes in it.
Yeah, that's right.
Like the cigarette smoke was like really well modeled.
I still remember the first demo I ever got of the first Mafia, which blows my mind. I can totally remember it broke. I remember they showed it to us and the demo broke like halfway into it and they had to reboot it and start it again. And it was just this really like boring conversation inside a house.
Yeah, I remember that.
I was like, I don't know if this is going to be a hit or not. And then we saw more of the game, and obviously it was much more than that, but not a lot more, honestly.
Well, the main thing I remember about Mafia was playing the review build and not being able to pass the race.
Oh, really. Yeah.
There's a car race. I remember like a third of the way through the game.
Journalists were all
and everyone reviewing it was stuck on it. Like no one could get past it. And finally they had to send out like it was a code or a patch or something that basically like let you skip it.
Yeah.
Or like that.
That's right.
I think they actually sent saves. I think they sent a save file right after it. So you could just keep going. And then like later they patched it to be easier.
Well, then there was also a game.
It was impossible. And we had to play it on a racing game on a keyboard. Fuck you. Like
Driver 3 was another one. I don't know if you remember that game or not, but they had to like nobody could get through the game and they had to send out codes to basically like turn off the damage or something on the cars.
I remember I think I had an argument with our reviewer on that one because he wanted to give it like a 4 out of 5 and I'm like, this game blows. Dude. Like I've been had to play it for like 3 days to get footage and I hate every minute of my life this week. Like what the and I think we compromised on like a 3.
Yeah,
but like
that's how it went.
What a weird ass game. And then that game's like valuable now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's Driver like, with like the 3 as the E.
Yeah, with the E, yeah. I had to get a copy of that for a show I did a few years ago. I had to get a copy of it.
It was expensive.
No, it was like $10. It was not worth anything.
Okay.
But like I just didn't have it because I hate that series. And like I had to go find one and played it and got some. I can't remember what it was. It was for that show I did for Facebook. With Trish.
That countdown show that you did?
Yeah, with Trish Hirschberger. But I can't remember what we were doing, which is doubly weird because I wrote that whole thing. I basically I decided all the content in that show, and I needed driver for something. I don't remember what it was. Oh.
So it was your own fault that you had to play it.
Oh yeah, I screwed myself on that show multiple times. We're like, oh, I want to put this game in. You don't have a way to capture that game, moron. That's why I ended up figuring out a good capture solution for the N64 because the Sucker Punch connection, I wanted to put Rocket Robot on wheels in it.
Right.
And I needed to be able to capture from an N64 without it looking like a bunch of blobs.
Yeah.
And so I had to figure that out.
So anyway, the first game needs completely remade is what we're getting at. It would not fly in 2020.
At the same time, I can't get a Panzer Dragoon Saga remake, but you'll remake Mafia fucking 3 from the ground up? Who wanted that?
Mafia 1
from the ground. Like, who wanted that?
And that's coming August 28th. Yeah. So that's a ways down the road. Now
that's alongside the physical release of the trilogy, I think. Like that's when it comes out in stores, basically.
Okay. And then today, both Mafia 2 remastered and then Mafia 3 Augmented, I guess is the best way.
Definitive edition.
Definitive edition.
So
today they're available now.
Today, right now. I woke up and I went to look up my Xbox and the updates came up and one of the updates was a 7.5 gig update for Mafia 3 and I was like, what the fuck is that? Because I hadn't heard about this. I hadn't looked at the internet yet, and I'm just like, what? Like, what could possibly be 7 gig? And so it's basically like. It's 4K now with some HDR and there's apparently some bugs fixed in there. I actually had played Mafia 3 for 40 hours this year because I loaded it up at the early days of the pandemic just to have a brainless thing I could play with the sound off while I listened to podcasts and watched science videos on YouTube. And it's great for that because it's just you're doing the same 4 things over and over and over and over and over and over again. So I actually am well enough versed in what Mafia 3 looks like on the Xbox One X. It was still downloading when we had to do this to start the show, but I will go back and look at that and I'll definitely know if it looks any better because they added, like you said, 7 gigabytes of data. So I'm guessing it's probably just high-res textures, higher res textures. Yeah. I think the patch note said it's basically 4K HDR update, which is good because it needed some of that. It's not a pretty game. Even for the
on
time.
Its own, it's not, and it's not that old either.
No, I remember playing it on my PC when it came out. I had the PC version, and I remember it just would not run well. It would tank into the 20 frames a second thing every once in a while. And I'm like, there is no reason this game should be taxing this system so much, but it just didn't run right. But I do like Hangar 13, and I'm glad they're still doing something. I hope they got other things up their sleeves. That's where Hayden Blackman went. He used to write a lot of their good Star Wars games.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping for something new from them, but I guess this is what they're doing. It's very weird to me that this would be that 2K would double down on the Mafia series. I don't know what
Mafia 2, for the record, it's kind of what Mafia 1 should have been. It's not set in the same exact era, but it's basically, like we've said before, that sophomore game that kind of gets everything right and gets all the features in that they had been shooting for the first time.
They have a map, like an open world to play in a little bit. There's a little more of that to it. Yeah, it's not an amazing game, but it's not bad either. It's also kind of the Mafia is as they came out, at least, Mafia 3 I think counts on this too. They're set in time periods that you don't see that much.
That's true.
And
or just settings it's Louisiana and Mafia 3.
Mafia 3 is basically New Orleans at the end of the Vietnam War. And tackles some really interesting sociological concepts and some racism, some really systematic racism stuff and kind of the nature of coming back from the war, and they get into it and it's good. And also although sometimes I play that game and I'm just this whole thing is just an excuse for this licensed soundtrack, isn't it? Because that soundtrack is amazing. But Mafia 1 and 2, set way back, kind of the Godfather era, more or less.
Yeah.
And I found the settings very refreshing.
For sure.
Yeah. Even if the game wasn't amazing, it was at least showing me an era that I don't get to play around in very often. And that counts for something, Ghost of Tsushima. So
Yeah, Mafia 3, I think what they're doing is they're like, look, we probably want to move on from this game, but since we just finished it, like, let's just future-proof it now.
yeah, it makes sense, I guess.
Let's get it out there. We won't ever have to go back and touch this game again. We can move on with Mafia 4 or whatever else we're doing next.
And I will say that Mafia 3, like, you get your money's worth, especially if you buy it now for like $5 or whatever. You know, it goes on deep sale pretty often.
Yep.
I'd never gotten super far in it, but like I finally got to the point where like you're taking over territory and then assigning it to all your underbosses, and like that took me like the real game starts like 15 hours in, like the early, like you would probably consider the gameplay prologue as they sort of introduce you to all the different gameplay concepts. That goes for like 10 hours. Like it doesn't stop. Like it's a slow burn, and then like eventually you're like rebuild. Like I was like, it's weird that like, you know, the restaurant you start in gets blown up and like you never really you do, but it happens like 25 hours later if you're doing all this. Like I guess you could beeline through the whole thing and just like kind of half-ass all the side stuff, but I don't do that. So yeah, it's a long ass game. It's Assassin's Creed Odyssey sort of like, oh, this is still going. Like, okay, cool.
Yep. Mitch, have you ever played any of the Mafia games?
No, never really liked I'm not a big fan of Mafia, like that stuff. Usually it relies on a great story, and if it's not a great story, I'm not going to be interested in playing it. And I've always heard.
Have you ever watched The Godfather? You ever watched any of the classic mob movies?
No.
Wow.
Godfather is on my list to eventually get to.
Definitely, if you're serious about cinema, I'm surprised you haven't watched The Godfather.
I mean, there's tons of older movies that I have not been able to get the time to watch. I literally just watched The Shining like 2 months ago. And
wow, I wish I could be you, man. I wish I could watch all these movies again for the first time.
You should really move The Godfather 1 and 2 up to the top of that list.
Yeah,
for sure. They're really, really good.
Yeah, I just have to
3 is awful. As bad as the first two.
You don't need to see 3. Don't worry about 3.
I just know there's so many, so for me, I'd have to like segment a big chunk of my time because I would want to watch them back to back because I know they're parts of I know about them, but I just never been able to see them, and the game's never really reviewed well, so it never gave me influence to say, hey, you should buy this, so I've never bought them.
I mean, I would say that Mafia 3 is not a traditional Mafia setting, and I would say Mafia 3, if you next time it goes on sale for like $5.99 or something, like pick it up and give it a shot.
Yeah. Emperor Dread just has a pretty good comment in the chat. He says, I absolutely hate mobs and mafia in stories. Everyone is just awful, and I want them all to die. That's a good point.
They're not good people, like, which is sort of like the point of Goodfellas. I think Goodfellas is a good kind of counterpoint to The Godfather, because the Godfather movies do romanticize the mob in a way that I understand why some people would find uncomfortable. And certainly even a lot of Mafia people would agree is inaccurate. Like Goodfellas is probably closer to the truth, and none of those people are anyone you want to hang around with. Even
a couple
Joe
years
Pesci.
ago, I did see The Kitchen, and that one was a Mafia type film, and it was pretty good.
You've seen The Kitchen, but you haven't seen The Godfather. That's
pretty random.
Well, I like
Kitchen's kind of a deep cut, man. Like
it is, yeah.
I forgot her name now. I'm just a big fan of the main actress in it. There was a couple actually really good actresses that I really liked their work, so I really wanted to watch it for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, mob content in games or film or TV, you are pretty much just looking for different degrees of awful with the characters. You're looking for that one character that shows like a modicum of empathy towards other human beings, and that's the hero of those movies.
Or not. I mean, you don't need. I will forever battle the idea that a protagonist has to be likable, because some stories you can't tell with likable people. And whether you think that's valuable or useful to you or not is going to vary from person to person. But
that's an interesting statement, actually.
it's extraordinarily uncontroversial in the history of literature. Certainly many of the great novels feature very unlikable and horrible people. The vast majority of Shakespeare's tragedies are about people you would certainly not want to have in your living room.
Yeah. I think in modern times, people would just call them the antagonist, even if they get the most screen time.
Well, no, you're always the protagonist. That is, and antagonist is specific. Like Thanos is the protagonist of Infinity War. He is the antagonist of Endgame.
Yeah, but I think most people don't look at it that way, though. They just look at the bad person as the antagonist.
Well, but the words mean what they mean.
I know. I agree with you. I'm just saying, I just think people just generally don't have it right.
Yeah, it's just that's the story structure is what the antagonist of something has to be kind of the one preventing the forward motion of the person or thing that the story is focusing on, and sometimes that's Thanos, and sometimes it's Iron Man.
Yep.
Some people would consider Iron Man a villain. Who knows?
Yeah. Now, I will say this about the Mafia trilogy. This month is awful. It really is. Like, we don't have a single game to talk about on today's show. So that tells you we're talking about stories.
You didn't want to talk about Elder Scrolls Blades?
No. We did already. We talked about it when it came out. That came out.
Yeah, but we didn't talk about it on the Switch.
We didn't. But to your point, Matt, that's where we're at.
Oh, it is definitely where we're at. I will say this. I am enjoying that game a lot. I'm not going to call it good, but I'm enjoying it a lot more with a controller.
I bet. I can see that totally. So you may want to consider the Mafia trilogy because, next month is great. Pretty much after this month, the rest of the year is awesome. So if you're looking for something to get you through the next couple weeks while we wait for the big boys to roll in, they might be worth considering.
Yeah, you could do worse than trying out Mafia 3 and 2 and 3. Yep. I mean, 1, obviously, you don't get until August.
Yeah.
When the physical copy comes out. And by August, I'm hoping we'll have other things to do than play Mafia 1 on August 28th, but we'll see where we are.
We'll see who knows. We'll see how everything goes. We don't even know anything right now.
I might be too busy lining up to see and to risk my life to see New Mutants in a theater by then. Who knows?
It may be true. Who knows?
No, thank you.
We don't know. All right. And in light of the fact that it's really slow, today is the 20th anniversary of the release of Perfect Dark. Now, I realize some of our younger viewers on the stream or watching the archive may not understand the relevance of Perfect Dark, but if you were a core gamer back when the game was about to come out and getting hyped and then it released, it was a landmark game because for most people, it was the sequel to the first ever successful console first-person shooter, which is GoldenEye. And it was billed as the sequel, the follow-up to that. The marketing plan, a lot of the trailers and commercials had from the makers of GoldenEye. Here's Perfect Dark. But it never really ended up becoming, I think, what it was hyped for. And so what I want to talk to you about, Matt, is what is the legacy, ultimately, of Perfect Dark? If it has one at all.
To me, the legacy of Perfect Dark is trying and failing to capture lightning in a bottle twice. Because GoldenEye occupied a whole lot of my time with my friends back in the day, and then Perfect Dark came out, and we all were like super excited and ready. And Perfect Dark, here we go, Perfect Dark, We played Perfect Dark for like 3 days and went back to GoldenEye.
Yep. Same thing.
And I don't think it was just like, oh, we don't like change. I think it was because Perfect Dark didn't have the same simplicity to it, and it didn't have that sort of pick up and play element. Like the guns were really cool ideas, but they weren't like easy to grasp, and like
it became really complicated.
Yeah, and people who are like, the more casual players who just like to pick up and play GoldenEye with us, like as soon as we started shooting them through walls with the X-ray gun and stuff, they're like, wait, how does that, like, why can you do that? Like,
Farsight? Is that what it was called? Yeah, Farsight.
And like they didn't dig that. And the other problem was it ran like crap.
Yeah.
Like that thing hit 10 frames a second on a regular basis, even with the expansion pack in place.
Yeah,
and
so
GoldenEye
I actually
just
have
better.
that here with me. So back in the day, the N64 got a RAM expansion. I know for a lot of you people, this is like whatever, but for younger folks, they may not realize this. And they were marketing it beforehand, I think it was like $29 for the 4 megabytes or whatever of RAM.
Yeah, sounds about. I mean, I got mine with a game, I think with Donkey Kong.
It came out with Donkey Kong. They released it with Donkey Kong 64. Absolutely. But Perfect Dark was supposed to be the killer app that forced people to get this. And I'll just show it to you really quickly if you can see it. So there's that hatch on the top of the N64. You take that off. And there, that red thing is the RAM expansion that was like $30 back in the day. And Perfect Dark was supposed to be the killer app because there were parts of the game that you were unable to access unless you had the RAM. And some of the stuff was like huge. Like if you didn't have the RAM expansion, I don't think you could even play like proper multiplayer. Like you had to play with what they called Sims, but they were bots.
I think you could, but they limited, like you couldn't add more Sims to it. I think you were limited to certain maps. We never played without it, so we never really ran into that. Because obviously we all had the packs from Donkey Kong or Rogue Squadron. Those were the two games that really sold the pack to people for the most part, as I recall.
It was Battle for Naboo, I think, was the one that used the pack, right?
No, they both did.
Did they?
Yeah, Rogue Squadron, I think, came out before it, but it did use it.
No, you're right. It did. You're right. Yep. But the Sims, the bots, was a huge focus for Perfect Dark. And I think that is one thing that we've seen that did not play out. I think their vision of the future, because remember, they weren't just bots. They had different names for the bots. There was like the Dark Sim and the Speed Sim or whatever, and they all had different behaviors. And a big part of the game was figuring out how to set up matches with the Sims that would be as fun as playing against humans. It never really worked. The Sims were just dead shots, pretty much. I mean, if you play with a Dark Sim, he could just headshot you like immediately. It wasn't fun.
7 Dark Sims on perfect difficulty is just like, you are not going to take 3 steps.
Yeah, you have no chance. And it just didn't work. And to your point, it just, because you needed the expansion pack, because it ran like crap, because in all honesty, a lot of the maps were really dark. I mean, it is called Perfect Dark. It made the visuals even muddier. It made it harder to see and pick up details of the characters from the backgrounds. It was
very muddy. It was not a visually appealing game to me.
No, even though what you saw if you were sitting still, it looked amazing.
Yeah, you're like, screenshots were incredible.
Oh yeah, you're like, I can't believe this is an N64, and then you had to move.
Yeah, then it moved, and you're like, what the fuck?
It's just this like blue, black, and brown smear, basically. Even if you had the expansion pack. So in hindsight, I don't think Perfect Dark, and look, it got high. I think IGN 64 gave it like a 10 out of 10. It got really high review scores. So I would say, looking back on that era, to me, that was one of the more overrated games.
In review wise, I don't think I hear normal people overrated.
No one really sings the praises of it anymore. And I think part of that might be that Perfect Dark Zero then came out after they were purchased by Microsoft, and that game was a travesty. But I also think what it made you realize it was maybe the first Perfect Dark wasn't so great either when you really get down to it.
Yeah, you might hang on a second.
Yeah, we lost your mic, I think.
No, I'm going to grab something real quick. Keep talking.
Okay. But Perfect Dark, so to Matt's point, he was talking about how we played GoldenEye with a lot of friends. Well, just like he did, like me and my friends, when Perfect Dark came out, we were like, okay, it's time to switch. We're going from GoldenEye to Perfect Dark now. It's going to be a Perfect Dark world from now on. And I think we literally tried to play it. We didn't even last 3 days, I think. I think our group lasted like 2 days with Perfect Dark before we never played the multiplayer together again after that. The campaign I did enjoy, although there were parts of it that were pretty dang hard. But I did enjoy the campaign for the most part. The last act is weird. Like the whole aliens thing, I don't know. It started to become like this tongue-in-cheek thing towards the end of the game. And then I think you saw that aesthetic.
It got very rare.
Yeah. And then I think you saw that aesthetic spill over into Perfect Dark Zero, where the whole game was kind of that way.
Yeah. It was wacky. It was, it didn't go so far as to stick googly eyes and everything like every other Rare game. But
and Mr. Pants wasn't in it, but otherwise.
I think he probably was in there somewhere.
He might have been
somewhere. Yeah, I was going to grab my copy of Perfect Dark Zero because I got it the night the 360 came out in that stupid hangar party that went on for like 36 hours that we did live, and it was one of the oh my god. But I got a bunch of the games there, and like I thought I had never opened it, but it for whatever reason I guess I must have opened it for something at some point.
You had to, Matt. You couldn't fight the urge to play.
No, I've never played that game.
Yeah,
I've never played Perfect Dark Zero. Everybody was like, "Meh." I'm like, "All right, well, I don't need to do that."
Don't play it.
I didn't care.
It's not worth your time for sure. Matt, do you think we'll ever see another Perfect Dark?
I would be mildly surprised, but I guess never say never, because I mean, that's the thing is like Microsoft needs more stuff in their library, but do they need another shooter? No.
Yeah, they don't. That's the last thing they need. And I think you saw that. Rare's new game is the furthest thing away from a shooter as it could be. So, I don't think we'll ever see another Perfect Dark either. I think the only possibility would be if Microsoft gave it to another studio who's really good at making
my only guess would be like if I was going to bring Perfect Dark back, I would bring Joanna Dark back in a different game. Like I would bring her back as like a Tomb Raider kind of thing.
Oh, interesting.
Like more of a third person adventure thing.
Yeah, I could see that. She wasn't the best character though either. I think that was
but I think
problem.
you could do something with her. Like there's
she's just very forgettable, I think.
There's potential there if you play your cards right, but she's also sort of like she's emblematic of this weird period, and she did not so much as the time that actually came out, but like it felt like there was that period in the early 2000s where like every character was like a weird sort of operative. Everybody was in like
spy this,
like that. Male and female characters in like the leather outfit with like guns and like they work in an organization and there might be aliens somewhere. It was like this weird fallout of like X-Files and like SWAT team and like going to war in Afghanistan all kind of created this weird swirl of like everybody. I think of that when I think of like brute force.
Yeah.
And like all that shit, like it's just
shovelware, basically.
All those sort of like useless like PS2 era like action shooter games. Like it was just sort of this weird generic period, and like and Joanna Dark feels like she both predated that and was too late to the party between Perfect Dark 1 and Perfect Dark 0.
Mitch, what do you know? What do you know about Perfect Dark? Anything?
I played Perfect Dark Zero for Xbox 360 when it first came out.
Oh, you did? You had to play the worst part of it first.
Yeah, it wasn't really that great. I mean, I actually just learned from you guys that it was the successor to GoldenEye. I mean, I played GoldenEye a ton when I was a kid and being babysat all the time. We would play on the N64. But I never played the original Perfect Dark. Someone in chat, I think it's SJD Swanland, pointed out that there is a Perfect Dark game for Game Boy Color, and that is a top-down third-person.
I have to say, I had completely forgotten about that.
I would never have remembered that if you hadn't mentioned it.
Nope.
Yeah,
good call. That. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, good call. So yeah, you have limited relationship with Perfect Dark, is what you're saying?
Yeah, and I don't really have. It wasn't really
not enough for you to care about if they ever made another one.
God, no. It was like it was just not interesting at all.
Yep. What they need to make is to do remasters and or remakes of No One Lives Forever, which is sort of the Perfect Dark idea done correctly.
That's actually a good point, and the art style also will hold up much better.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
The 60s sort of like James Bond groovy baby sort of element will work. Is a little more timeless than that sort of late 90s metal we can do reflections now thing that was going on in Perfect Dark.
Everything's marble and aluminum. Yeah. Yeah, they were just making use of the hardware. And look, Rare, what they did on the N64 is still mind-blowing to this day, but I think Perfect Dark was them getting ahead of themselves and maybe getting a little full of themselves because they got away with it with Banjo-Tooie because that game also really pushed the boundaries and at certain points also ran like complete and total crap.
I mean, everything on that system did by the midpoint of its life.
It did. Like they started pushing it. And,
Same with like Jet Force Gemini, which is one of my favorite games of all time at the time. Yeah. And I went back and tried to, I played the Rare replay version on Xbox One, which they thankfully patched to play like a normal frickin' game. But like, the problem was that I went back when I got that set up to capture N64 stuff. I went back and as long as I got this out, I'm going to play some of these old games. And I tried to play Jet Force Gemini. Couldn't. It runs like a slideshow. Like all that stuff runs like I don't know how we did it.
One of the hardest end bosses in the history of games, in my opinion.
That was one of my first things at.
Oh my God. One
of my first things at Tech TV was Adam Sessler and one of the other segment producer Greg Bemis. They'd been stuck on the first major boss in Jet Force Gemini, where you fight as the dog against him. And
Lupus, was that his name?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I've beaten that game. I said, no problem. And they're like, all right. Like, and Bemis was like, I'm bringing my cartridge in, and you're going to beat that stupid boss for me because I got to see how this is done. And so we brought it in. I sat down. I'm like, okay, I remember how this works. And I did beat it on my first try with one hit left
Oh
me.
gosh!
Like it won because he also hadn't like found all the health upgrades, so he was playing with a low life bar. But I did it. I remember that was one of my first like real bonding moments with the team. Was like everybody was in there watching me like try to beat this thing that Greg couldn't beat, and I did it. And
that was the trick with that game, is collecting the extra health, because if you didn't, you had no chance. You really didn't. Even at the end of the game, when I had collected all of it, I had as much health as I could have. I still fought that end boss probably 100 times before I beat it.
I ended up redoing the whole game. Like I played the whole game again because when I got to the end boss, I did not Mizar, I think was his name.
Mizar, yeah.
I got to the end and I did not have enough homing missiles.
You knew right away whether you could do it or not, because you needed all those homing.
And there was no way to back out of it. Yep. Like you couldn't go away.
Video games from the 90s.
They did not care if you had a good time.
Nope, not at all. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about the next Witcher game, something that I am 100% sure that pretty much everyone is excited about. We haven't really heard much from CD Projekt Red about this, other than the fact that it is in development and that it is coming after they're done with Cyberpunk 2077. But otherwise, they've been pretty tight-lipped about what's going on with the game. Obviously, the Netflix series just premiered, and I think there's another season coming of that, although who knows when that's going to be now. But they're starting finally to drop some hints about what the next Witcher game is going to be. And a website talked with one of the lead writers at CD Projekt Red this week, and he said that Ciri might be the character that they end up going back to for the next game. Matt, how do you, as one of the biggest fans of The Witcher 3, how do you feel about that?
I mean, obviously he's sort of speaking off the cuff. My guess for the next Witcher game is that it will deal with her, but you will not play as her.
Oh, really?
I think they're going to go back to their original concept for a Witcher game, which was to create your own Witcher.
So Geralt would not be a part of it either then.
Geralt's story is over. You will not be playing as Geralt. I mean, he might show up, but I think Witcher 3 pretty much closes the book on that. Like, Geralt gets his ending. And they've said pretty definitively that the Geralt story is over.
I wonder what happens with the Netflix show eventually. I wonder what happens with the Netflix show eventually.
Well, they got a lot of books to get through. So
I guess since it's based on the books, it's kind of irrelevant, really.
Yeah, it won't. I mean, they could probably do 5-6 more seasons if they want, and
with
never run out of material.
Yeah.
And remember that the author doesn't particularly care for the books and doesn't particularly care for the games and considers them to basically be fan fiction. So
he didn't care for them until he wanted paid.
That was part of it. But if
then all of a sudden he loved the games.
But if you go past like the end of the books, I feel like it's not gonna match up to the game. You know, also like the end of the books, it was a pretty definitive end, to the point that when the reason their original idea for the Witcher game was to create your own Witcher was because it didn't make any sense to play as Geralt because of the situation you're in at the end of the books. But in the end, they decided to just sort of fudge it and erase his memory, and now we're just going to do it again, which is fine, because I think Geralt was one of the reasons that it was a popular series.
Yes, for sure.
But I think a new Witcher is going to. I think you're going to be a new character, and Ciri.
Why wouldn't it be Ciri?
Because Ciri is not a Witcher. Ciri doesn't have the same abilities.
How could you call it The Witcher then? You're right. That's true.
Like, she didn't go through the trials of the grasses. She has a lot of cool abilities, but she is not a Witcher.
That's right.
I mean, I think there
aren't many of them, though, right?
No, there's very few. But they would consider. I mean, I think the Witchers would consider her a Witcher because they, just because they didn't do the trial of the grasses, which they consider to be abuse. They didn't do that. But like, they wouldn't go around like, you're not a real Witcher, because that's not how they think of her. But if you want to make a game called The Witcher, where you're playing as a Witcher with all the potions and you have to have a Witcher in there and not her. Also, she can teleport, which is sort of cheating.
Now, is there any chance of her doing the trials now, though, to become a Witcher? So that could be a story where she wants to become a Witcher. No, she's too old, and she's frankly got better things to do. It would be more interesting to play a fledgling Witcher who survives the trials. Do you think that might be the concept, like an Ocarina of Time type thing, where you start as a child and work your way up to adulthood? I don't know if you start as a child, but I bet you would start as like kind of you might do a time skip Aloy kind of thing, where you see this character go through the training and the trials, and then it jumps like a few years later when they're slightly more seasoned, and you're sort of like a Witcher doing, walking the path early on. Not as experienced as Geralt in the TV show, because he's been doing that for like 70 years at that point.
But something like that, kind of a, it's almost the Star Wars game I want, like, fledgling Jedi action RPG. Like that would be sort of what I'd be about.
Do you think fans will want to create a character though? Because this is the one franchise where it's, even though most of its contemporaries do it, it doesn't do it, and it's been really successful not doing it.
Well, you don't have a choice because Geralt's done.
Right.
You can't go back to Geralt. And I don't think Ciri can carry the same kind of gameplay.
But I mean, if they introduce a new Witcher and you just play as that Witcher.
I just don't see the point. Like, if you're going to introduce a new Witcher, let me create it. Like, if you're not going to use a pre-established character, let me pick at least male or female, or.
But, there was a time where Geralt wasn't established.
Well, Geralt's been established since the book started.
Right, but when the first game came out, nobody knew who he was.
Yeah, but people, you had something to draw from the books. Like he's based on a series of 7 novels. I mean, you had a lot of material.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just saying the people who were playing the game didn't know him from Adam. They just resonated with the character and liked the character.
Yeah, well, I resonate with Shepard, but I created him or her. Yeah. Like it works either way. As long as you get the performance out of the actor, it doesn't matter. And I think most people, especially younger players, universally, and I mean universally, want to create their character.
I'd agree. I mean, you can also see in Cyberpunk 2077, obviously, you can create your character. It can be male or female. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if you're absolutely right. But as usual, I'm just being devil's advocate.
And the biggest obstacle I've run into is trying to recommend Ghost of Tsushima to people, including people that are younger, is every time I tell them that you play as this Jin guy, their response is, why can't I make my own samurai?
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, that's a valid point.
It's what people expect now. I mean, it's just the way games have evolved over time. People expect to, and the other part of it too is that it ties into finances too, because that's a gateway for publishers to make money. If you build your own character and then you get your own outfits and then you want to buy outfits and you want exclusive outfit. I mean, it's the entire Fortnite business model. So I think finances and just the way that CD Projekt Red is designing its games now, I think you're probably right. I think you're going to be able to build a character and be male or female. And
I think there's just a big draw to, especially a younger audience, of making a character that looks like them, who feels like they're playing as themselves. I think a social media generation is much more comfortable with the idea of being yourself in a weird situation as opposed to being someone else and escaping from it. That's more of an RPG, but that's also an RPG thing, is to decide who you're playing as. So I think that's where a lot of that comes from. And you're just going to get more traction, I think, in this Witcher universe. If you can't use Geralt because that story's told, let people make their own Witcher. Let people choose their way through the story in the same way they did as Geralt to some degree, although Geralt obviously had an established personality. But you could choose to be kind of the cold professional or the sarcastic jerk or the helpful good guy. Like you could play Geralt different ways. And just let someone do that, and have Ciri sort of weave through the story in and out, and maybe have some other characters we recognize. You can set it whenever the hell you want, really. You could even have it be a prequel, then cross paths with Geralt earlier on in the path, like in the book era or something. Could be anything. I'm also curious because in Witcher 3, Ciri mentions the cyberpunk world as a place she was when she was stepping between worlds trying to run from the wild hunt.
Oh snap!
And because she does mention basically a world of hovering cars and metal arms and stuff like that. And it's a cute little in joke to what they're working on next. Is obviously they announced the game. They announced Cyberpunk in 2012, I think, and Witcher 3 came out 3 years later. So obviously that was a nod to that. But I persistently wonder if Ciri. I don't know what the licensing issue would be there, but I would persistently wonder if Ciri will be at least referenced in Cyberpunk at some point.
That'd be sweet. Hey, JM Rain 99, thank you for all the tier 1 subs you're giving our community. That's awesome. Mitch, what do you want to see from the next Witcher game?
It's tricky because the world.
Do you prefer creating your own character or having a really good one that the studio creates?
It depends on the justification. So in this case for The Witcher, creating your own character does make a lot more sense because a Witcher themselves doesn't share as much emotion. And so you don't really have to rely on that to be the key component to go through the story in the game. It's mainly the storylines of the other characters is the thing that intrigues the people in the Witcher universe. So for that reason, I'm fine with a create your own character. Hopefully they would involve more Ciri because I think that was probably the worst element. I'm not as big on The Witcher 3 as a lot of people are, and I think the worst element is Ciri because she just gets introduced, and all of a sudden there's this relationship, but you don't understand it, and she's the driving force of that entire plot for the whole part of the main game. And so it for me, it lacks that connectivity.
One of the weird things about Witcher 3 is that it is the game of the three games, it is the one that requires the most book knowledge to piece some of this stuff together, because the Ciri relationship between him and Yennefer is very much the core of the books, which I think you understand by the end of this first season of the Netflix show. That whole first season is setting up those three people meeting each other.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And if you don't know that backstory and you're just jumping into Witcher 3, the significance of them finding Ciri is not very well explained, I don't think.
Well, on top of that, even if you watch, for me, I watched the cutscenes of the first two games going into the third game, and that still doesn't give you enough of a reference.
No, Ciri's barely mentioned in the first two games.
Exactly. So I think the side missions were the thing that was its most enduring quality. And in this case, if they keep going in that method, I mean, they could do anything, to be honest. I like Matt's idea in a sense of doing growing up as a Witcher. And, while you're doing that, maybe that's the tutorial part, is as you're going through the trials, and then you're like I don't know if you have an apprentice. I don't know the plot as well. Matt, you can probably fill something in, but you would
usually
have
Witchers are trained by schools, so you would not take on an apprentice typically. It would be the Vesemir equivalent.
You would be the apprentice, basically.
Yeah. Okay. And I know you might find others and bring them to your school's headquarters where they would be trained. But also, by the time of the Witcher games, most Witchers are kind of against the idea of making more Witchers, because the Trial of the Grasses, which makes you into a Witcher, has a 2/3 chance to kill you. And it's also it's all horrible. It's a horrible life. It's a horrible thing you go through. It's terrible. And so a lot of them have just stopped doing it because they don't find Witchers to be necessary anymore. And I think they're a dying breed.
Yeah, I think that thing that would be really interesting for it is once you're done with school, right after you're done with school, trying to get your footing in to learn to be a Witcher out in the world. I think that would be an interesting take to try to make this game go. Because Geralt was such a seasoned person, you couldn't relate as much to all the elements of the creatures because he always knew that knowledge. There wasn't anything in his way that he had to overcome, in a sense, where if you're going in there fresh, you're like, oh man, let me refer to my books. Oh man, this is how they attack. Okay, I need to learn that.
I think it'd be interesting to do that also because Geralt is so wrapped up in royal stuff and works for kings and sort of. It'd be interesting to see a younger Witcher sort of on the ground, dealing with sort of the down and dirty stuff. And like you say, a Witcher studies tons of this stuff, all the monster lore and all that, but they've this new Witcher you're playing probably knows everything there is to know about griffins, but I bet he's never seen one before.
Yeah. I think the whole psychological angle of just being a Witcher and having to deal with the life changes that come along with that was one of the things in the Netflix show that I really liked, that they explored a little bit, was what it's like to just have that life and the great parts about it and the downsides of it. Seeing a young adult kind of coming to grips with that, I think could definitely add an emotional angle to it, maybe that it hasn't had before. So yeah, I'm on board with that. I think it would be a great idea. I will say this though, I think in general, I do like characters that are created by the studio more. And that's because I never can really create a character that ends up looking anything like me. It's always just this rough approximation. I never want to spend 4 hours making my character. And every time I feel like that's about how much time I'd have to spend to get it to really look like me. And so generally the characters that I play as that are supposed to be me in games, I don't really connect with them in that way visually. So look, I'll take it either way, but I think if I had to choose, I would prefer to have a Kratos or someone like that designed by the studio than them just say, here, make yourself, or make some goofy character like GTA. A lot of the characters in GTA that people make, I can't even stand to look at them. So I don't know. I think there's positives and negatives to both approach, I guess.
And I would agree with you 100%. Quick shout out, Tiny2K, man, throwing out
Tiny2K
throwing out the gauntlet with 10. He's doubling. So are we going to get
one up them?
Yeah.
See what happens.
I would say that like I can take or leave the established character versus create a character depending, but like if you're not going to let someone create a character or at least choose gender or skin color, I feel like you better have a good reason for that.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Like I don't. I mean, I'm not that I'm like down on the game about it or anything, but like I do not understand why I can't make Cal a girl in Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah.
Like I realize it means you have to voice, the whole script
and
again,
reanimate and whatever,
reanimate some of it or whatever. But like it just seems like one of the main criticisms I've gotten from people that I know who played it, like especially women, are just like, I wish I could have been a girl Jedi because that's what I wanted to be. And I'm like, yeah, there's no reason not to do that.
There for that game, absolutely no reason why they couldn't have put a female character.
Like Geralt needs to be Geralt. I get why people want to be able to create a Witcher character, but like now maybe that now do that. Like,
well, I think any game where you have romance involved, it makes things more complicated because
I don't think it does. Like BioWare navigates that just fine.
That's a lot of work though. And a lot of developers don't want to do that. They don't want to have to create this entire like relationship system now because they have both male and female characters. Whereas
just make everybody bi.
There you go. It's one way to solve it, I guess.
Who cares?
I don't care, but some people might.
Well,
but like to your point about Geralt, though, his relationships and his beddings with various women, that's an integral part of his character, to be honest. And
I don't think there are female Witchers.
Yeah, I don't think there are either, actually. Yeah.
If I recall from the books, I think that's a thing. I think all the Witchers are boys.
Yeah, in the game they mentioned something about no female Witchers. That's why Ciri never really was one, but she was trained.
So the next Witcher, then they really can't let you pick gender, then, right?
Well, you
Unless
can
they break the rules.
I mean, you can break the rules. That's as John Landis used to say, how do you kill a vampire? And somebody would you'd say like, oh, garlic or steak, and he's like, no, you kill a vampire any way you want because they don't fucking exist. Like so yeah. If you want to change that, like, go ahead and change it, or you bring in some other school. I'm sure you can make like you do a thing where like you choose your school for the Witcher, like cat school or bear school, and you just come up with another school. And this school is we didn't know about this school, and they're all girls. All girls. Witcher.
There's easy ways to.
Who cares?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Assassin's Creed kind of set the precedent for male and female, so it's kind of it's now expected.
It is a lot of work, though.
So.
It's a lot of extra work that you have to.
It is, but I think it's worth putting it in.
Agree, 1,000%. I just think some teams just run out of time and budget. And
I mean, I would probably guess that was what happened with Fallen Order. Is like,
yep, that's my guess.
Fallen Order barely got its combat done, so
yep, they're like, they're like, we barely got one character to play well. Like, let's.
But I'm just saying,
for the sequel for two.
Jedi Academy got that right, and Jedi Academy came out like 13 years before it. So maybe for the next one.
Yep,
I don't need to play as Cal again.
Yep. Before we move on, I should also mention it's the 5th anniversary of The Witcher, which is another reason why, or The Witcher 3, which is another reason why we're discussing this. And right now the game is on sale at like rock bottom prices. So if you're one of the 3 people left on planet Earth that hasn't played The Witcher 3, you can go pick it up for dirt cheap right now. And give
also, Thursday is the 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back.
Man. That's crazy. Yesterday was I don't know if people don't care about this, but yesterday was the 40th anniversary of the lead singer of Joy Division dying. And
I saw like 4 people post that on Facebook yesterday, including you. Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I mean, he committed suicide, but he had epilepsy. And since he's died, he's created a lot of awareness for epilepsy, and they were celebrating kind of the 40th to help promote awareness around epilepsy. But wow, I mean, because of that, I listened to some of their music again yesterday, and like literally it's 40 years old and it could have been made yesterday.
Yeah. How crazy is it? How crazy that he did all that by 23?
I know. And the crazy part about that whole story, and if you can watch 24-Hour Party People, Control is a really good documentary about it. It's a really, really interesting story. And even if you don't care about music or anything, it's a great movie to watch. But they were on literally the night he killed himself was the night before they were blowing up. Their American tour started the next day. And the pressure of that tour was too much for him, and he couldn't handle it. And
it's the dissolve of his marriage and all. I mean, he was having a lot of problems. And the thing is, like, you see interviews with the band, and they're like, oh, we really didn't know how in pain and how horrible they were. Like, have you heard his lyrics, boys?
I know. But they'll say that, like, we didn't really listen to what he was singing. It's like, how could you not listen to what he was?
Fucking musicians.
But again, it's a really interesting story. And again, there's a black and white doc that they did called Control, which is really good. Like the actors actually play their music live in that, by the way. They learned how to play the songs, which is really cool. And then there's like a more like satirized version of it called 24-Hour Party. Anyway, just an interesting story.
Yeah.
Also,
you're right. Even if you don't care, it's still play. It's like that Michael Jordan series it's on right now. It's like, I don't care about basketball at all, but that whole series is riveting.
Yeah, it is. It's just drama. Drama is drama. Yeah. It doesn't matter what it's circling
It's the fact that he and Pippen are talking about the real shit that happened back then. Like, that's what's interesting. Yeah, I love stuff like that like covers something that's like, hey, even if you don't care about the actual subject we're covering, the human drama is going to get you through.
Yep. And for those of you who don't know, Joy Division ended up becoming New Order, and New Order is still around to this day. So you may not know that Joy Division actually was the first band. And then when Ian Curtis died, the remaining members formed New Order, added a couple people, and off they went. So anyway, definitely worth watching. Rest in peace, Ian Curtis. I've enjoyed your music for 40 freaking years now. Amazing. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about something a lot more lighthearted. Way more lighthearted than people who killed themselves over epilepsy. And that is Paper Mario, the Origami King. Now, I think most people look at Paper Mario as a franchise that I think they have generally positive vibes for. But I think a lot of that is dependent upon how old they are. So I think if Mitch had played a lot of Nintendo games, I think his opinion of Paper Mario would probably be pretty sour. But Matt and I, who have been playing them for quite a long time, at least for me personally, I'll say for myself, I still have positive vibes for Paper Mario because the first 3 games to me were pretty freaking amazing. They are RPGs, although the last few entries have really kind of veered away from that. And that's
I don't even know what I'd call Sticker Star.
Yeah, Sticker Star or Color
huge
Splash.
Disappointment.
Yeah, Color Splash was the last one that came out for Wii U, and it reviewed okay, but the fans really hated it because it had completely gone away from its RPG roots. Enter Paper Mario, the Origami King. And it appears that Nintendo has been listening to fans because it looks like it's going right back to the old school way of doing things.
Also kind of out of nowhere. Like they dropped this thing on Twitter, didn't they? Like, it's just like, by the way.
Yeah, another topic actually that I almost added to this week's show was, are we starting to see Nintendo repeat the cycle again? Meaning another platform where the first couple years are amazing, and then after that, you're sitting around waiting for games to play because it's starting to get into that territory.
Yeah, but everybody's in that territory right now, so it's hard to single out Nintendo for that.
Well, the difference
also,
is
Nintendo's about
those consoles have been available for 7 years.
Yeah, so they should have some content.
But like the Switch has only been available for like 3 or 4.
But what I'm saying is the whole schedule this year is forked.
Yeah,
for everything, not just games. And also, like, you know, it is a bad month, but Nintendo's about to give me a remake of one of my favorite games of all time in about 12 days. So, like, I can't be too down on them. And then they're busting this out for summer release out of nowhere.
Yeah, this is also July 17th, I believe. Yeah. Same day as Ghost of Tsushima, which is an odd
two very different approaches to your summer release schedule, but here we are.
You can buy them both. You can play Ghost of Tsushima and get bummed out, and then you can switch to Paper Mario and come back up, and then go back down, and you can just ride that seesaw all the way through. But look, personally, I am really excited for this game. They haven't shown a ton of raw gameplay. There's one literally like 15-second snippet that just shows raw, and it's at the end of the B-roll that you're going to see here, but it just shows the raw gameplay, and it appears to have this, I don't know if it's just this battle or if all the battles are going to be this way, but the battle is taking place on this disc that has a bunch of different rings on it, and the rings like spin. And so part of the objective is to line up all the enemies that are on these spinning discs into a line so you can attack and then hit them all at once. I don't know if that mechanic's going to be like the whole game.
According to Nintendo, that is true.
That is the way it works, the whole game.
When I was looking it up in Noops, that's what it says on their website.
Okay. How do you feel about that battle system, Matt? A lot more almost strategy RPG this time versus just straight up turn-based RPG.
I mean, it's got to be better than Sticker Star.
Yep.
But like,
Color Splash.
I'll reserve judgment until I like really play it, because that seems like a mechanic that could early on be like, oh, this is a cool idea, and like 14 hours later, it's just like, oh my god, I'm tired of fucking slogging through this mechanic to like line everybody up, and I just want to hit things and be done with it.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Like, the good entries of the Paper Mario series like always keep it fresh and always keep it evolving to some degree, or at least give you something to do with it that keeps it interesting. So I'm hoping that this will be a return to form in that regard. I love the premise, so you kind of already got me on board in that regard. I'm very curious if this battle system can keep my attention the whole length of the game.
I will say this, naming this franchise Paper Mario made it tough on them from the get-go, because every theme has to have something to do with paper. Like, they should have probably just kept the name like Super Mario RPG or something instead of...
I think they didn't want to call it that because it sets up expectations of that Square game from the Super Nintendo.
That's true, but now, though, hindsight's always 20/20. But now that doesn't matter.
No, but I think
it would have sucked for a few years, but
they love the Paper Mario aesthetic internally. I think.
I like it too, but it just eventually seems like they're starting to run out of ideas.
Well, I think they already did some time ago, but the idea of an origami world that sort of contrasts with the normal paper doll world is an interesting one. Like, I think they might have something there. There's a lot of detail in how they've designed the origami stuff versus how they've designed the standard Paper Mario stuff. I like that dichotomy. Yeah. I'm interested. After Sticker Star and to a lesser degree Color Splash, I never thought I'd say that again about Paper Mario, but it feels like they've sort of been like, okay, let's just roll this back a little bit and kind of go more Thousand Year Door with this. And there is nothing bad about that statement to me.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like they listen to fans, finally. They've been asking for this for a while, and that's kind of... Isn't that the Switch in a nutshell, really? Isn't it just Nintendo finally listening to its fans?
Pretty much, it seems like it.
Think about all the things that Nintendo has delivered with Switch that fans were asking for a really long time. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's sort of the natural third. It's the end of the trilogy, basically, where like the Wii blew up and they thought they had like this magic ticket to like endless revenue and this huge new audience, and they didn't realize that huge audience just wanted to play Wii Sports, and they thought of the Wii as a little box that just did that.
Yeah.
And so they brought the Wii U out and didn't even... I still remember when they premiered the Wii U, and I was on mic with one of the producers and Adam, and we were arguing over whether it was a new system or not.
Yeah. People couldn't figure it out.
They barely... I don't know if they even showed the actual console in that initial reveal trailer. It was just the pad. And everyone's like, is it an add-on for the Wii? Is it what is it?
And then after the conference, they had the Wii U under the TVs. And I remember I took a photo of it, and I think I posted it on Twitter. I don't know if Twitter existed back then, but I ended up sharing that photo with people, and it like exploded because it was really long, I think is what people were shocked by. Because if you looked at it from the front, you're right. It was hard to tell it was even a new system. But then when you saw it from the side, it like stretched way back farther than the Wii ever did.
Yeah, the footprint is completely different. But
and then once people saw that photo, they were like, "Oh crap! Okay, that is actually a different."
And the press release that went out right after the press conference happened, like explicitly said it's a new console, it's a new game system.
Yeah.
But if you just watched the press briefing, it was completely understandable if you weren't sure. Like
people
it was
thought
very
it was just
vague.
like, oh, there's a new tablet controller for the Wii now.
And they thought the audience for the Wii that made the Wii a giant runaway success would come over and play this too, and they absolutely did not. And the Switch,
like, you know what? We're gonna play up to our fans from now on.
I think the Switch is sort of like an inherent acknowledgement that like, oh, we should play to the people who never left us.
Yeah,
the core fans who they stuck it out through the Wii. A lot of them bought Wii U's to play their favorites things. The things that were on the Wii U were good. I mean, I would rarely have recommended to buy it, but there's stuff on that system. A lot of it's coming forward to the Switch now. There's stuff on that system that I really liked. It was some of my favorite things of that generation.
There's really nothing left to bring forward, because this week we also heard rumors that Pikmin 3 is going to be released for Switch.
You rescue Pikmin 3, you rescue Xenoblade Chronicles X, and you rescue the HD Zelda remasters, and I think you're good.
You're done. Where's Pikmin 4?
Who knows?
Is it?
Pikmin
Miyamoto
4
on record saying it was basically done 2 years ago. On record.
Yeah. Knowing him, though, it was like he said that, and then he thought about it, and he's like, no, we must start over. You know? It's like,
I mean, he must be completely reworking that formula for the fourth game. That's the only thing I can figure. But I mean, I'll tell you what,
yeah,
Nintendo
I think
can really use a new Pikmin right about now.
they could. I think you're right. This Switch is sort of like, you know, Switch was finally them sort of, their come to Jesus moment when they realized, like, oh,
That's
we better not, like, we better just take this and do what we do and please the people that are always there.
And if we lose them,
look what happened.
Yeah.
It blew up.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
Funny how that works.
but it blew up. It's like, I think the blow up of the Switch versus the blow up of the Wii is the greatest lesson to take, because the Wii sold crazy numbers of units, and then you could barely sell 10 million copies of Super Mario Galaxy.
Yep.
And on the Switch, the attach rate is through the roof because the gamers
your fans.
bought it. Yeah,
the fans bought it.
The players bought it, and they want the content, so that's where the money's made, and it's great.
Yep.
So well done for finally figuring that out 15 years later.
I would also say well done to the fact that Nintendo announced this game and it's coming out a few months later.
Yeah.
I'm all for more of that.
I mean, and they need to, because like we said, once you get past Xenoblade Chronicles in 12 days, what's coming out on the Switch? Like, there was nothing announced yet. I mean, not that there's nothing coming, but there's something, we needed to know something, and here it was.
The other thing too about Switch is that it's had this little bit of a grace period where developers were still making games for PS4 and Xbox One that could possibly run on Switch. Mm-hmm. Now, all the developers are abandoning those platforms. They're all moving to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. And so the third-party support for Switch is going to start to suffer. And if they don't have that first-party stuff rolling in, again, it could be... Yeah. The Switch could end up just basically being viable for an extra year over other Nintendo consoles.
I do think you're going to see a lot of... I think you are going to see a lot of remaster content. Like, even if you don't see the new stuff that's coming out on the other consoles.
All the Mario platformers that are...
No, I mean like third parties. I mean like the BioShock and Borderlands. I think that will be what third parties start doing, is they take like other older remasters and start putting them on Switch.
Make a quick buck.
You pretty much. I mean, and kind of fleshing. I mean, I don't have no interest in having BioShock on the Switch. Why would I care about that? I have that game like 3 different ways.
Yeah, me too.
All on more powerful hardware. Yeah. But like, there's no reason not to. It sells stuff like that sells so well.
To sell some, yeah.
And it stands out in that just vast blasted heath of garbage that is the eShop. Like, oh my God! Every time I open that thing, I'm like, where are the games? Like, not the mobile shovelware that for some reason just chokes this thing to death.
Oh, it's so bad. It's like we curate every day, and typically how it works is Vincent will kind of go through the admin and delete a lot of the duplicate stories, because one publication writes a story, then 18 other publications write the same story. So he'll go through, he'll start deleting the duplicates. And you start like really digging in to the content, really, and you start to see that, all these games are not being announced anymore for Switch. Like we do when we do Sifted HQ, and Mitch, like he'll do noobs, all the new games that are announced. Almost every entry at the end says every platform but Switch, or it's coming for PS4, PC, Xbox One, and not Switch. Like every,
or like maybe we'll talk about Switch later. It seems to happen a lot too.
And the other thing too is that like when Vincent leaves a lot of that stuff in there, I'll get to the end and it will just be this deluge of crappy shovelware mobile games going to Switch. And we don't even curate them because a lot of them are from like 2013, 2015. Like a lot of the small developers have decided that Switch is a good place to maybe try to make some extra coin on their own.
And they're probably right, but sometimes I look at that eShop, like, new release section or whatever, and I just want to, like, I want like a little like filter checkbox. It just says like filter out garbage. Yeah, like, it's just like, and I kind of it's like you know what I mean. Like,
yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
Come on, we all know.
The standards for the eShop.
Just show me the real games. Give me a real games tab.
Yeah, I mean, the standards for the eShop probably aren't any different than PSN or Xbox Live, but those platforms are much better at bubbling up the stuff that you actually care about instead of inundating you with a bunch of crap. And that's something Nintendo can certainly work on.
Like the floor should be Elder Scrolls Blades.
Yeah.
Like that's like the minimum quality level. And then but Elder Scrolls Blades is probably one of the best mobile game port dumps on forever.
The system. Yeah. On the Switch. Absolutely. Most of them are like endless runners and goofy like clones and whatever. Yeah. Just a bunch of garbage. So I don't know. It's been great. The Switch has been amazing so far. And we obviously still have Metroid Prime 4 coming and Bayonetta 3 and Breath of the Wild 2.
I still got my fingers crossed for a Mercury Steam 2D Metroid.
Which could absolutely
I still think
happen.
That's a non-zero chance for this year.
I agree. But, also, if you remember, the rumor that said 2D Metroid coming this year, it was the same rumor that said Paper Mario on the way and also releasing really soon. So that leak was right. So my guess is there is absolutely a 2D Metroid coming. However, I still, looking down the road for Switch, it's starting to look a little dicey. I'll be honest with you, as far as software is concerned. The good news is for new buyers, there's already so many great games available for it.
Nintendo's just going to have to step it up and do that thing where they release at least 2 things a quarter from on their own that make it worth playing.
Yep.
And I think they can do that now. They don't have to worry about a portable system. I mean, obviously it is portable, but like you don't have the 3DS, DSi or whatever, like kind of
sucking up,
distracting it. You can put everything on the one system, and I think they can do that. Yep. I'm sure we'll find out more over the next month or so as more stuff gets announced, and I'm sure there'll be some direct that like sets up at least part of the remainder of the year.
Nintendo has announced that they said that they're not going to be doing a direct for quite some time due to coronavirus. So this drop
that's interesting.
In regards to
Nintendo's
Paper
not even
Mario,
going to do like an E3 thing.
They're not doing
like
anything
everybody
in
else.
June or July. They are staying out of it. So
all right, well, this might be how they deliver this from now on. Then I guess
exactly. I think that's what's going to happen. It's going to be like one game announcement.
Well, it's not like it didn't work.
No, correct.
Yeah,
it worked.
We're talking about it right now. Mitch, have you ever played a Paper Mario game?
No, but I like the aesthetic, and this one seems a little interesting. The wheel mechanic, I think there's some clever stuff you could do with it, so I will definitely pick this one up.
Well, I'll wait before I tell someone to pick it up, but that's an interesting concept for sure.
Well, I'm not
probably don't want to tell people to pick
it up. I'm just going to pick it up,
Okay. Wow, you're sold that fast. That's impressive. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk about definitely, I think, the biggest story of the week. We personally, GameFace, we've been giving Sony the business here for the last couple months, wondering why its promotion has been slow, why we know so much about Xbox Series X and we don't know much about PlayStation 5. And that's still the case, to be honest with you. We still know way more about one than the other. However, this week we got some insight from a pretty unlikely source, and not one I would have ever guessed. Epic Games finally debuted the first tech demo for Unreal Engine 5, which is a big deal all on its own, because Unreal Engine 5 is the engine that's going to power probably 30 to 40% of all the games that are released for Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. But Epic twisted the knife even a little bit further by stating that not only was it the first Unreal 5 demo, it is also running live on PlayStation 5 hardware. So all we had were the specs that we had gotten from Mr. Cerny. People were, I would say, underwhelmed by the specs. At best, at worst, people were saying it was vastly underpowered compared to Xbox Series X. Matt, after watching this tech demo, how do you feel about that?
Well, I always thought that was bullshit. So it's not, again, there's no way to calculate that really until we see what these games are doing and taking advantage of what Cerny was talking about. But it's clear from this demo that like there's nothing to worry about.
Yes. Yeah. And if you're, I think if you're Microsoft, you may have something to worry about now.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Epic said that this runs just as well on Series X.
Oh, it did?
Yeah,
I didn't see
the
that.
same. This is just what they're going to look like, I guess. I mean, I don't think they're going to look this good because obviously, like, this is a demo that's running without AI and without like a gameplay systems underneath it and that kind of
pathfinding and all that kind of
thing. Yeah, but it's just an example of like, here's what you can do, and here's how we can streamline this, and here's how I also thought it was interesting that they did call out the sound.
Yeah,
everybody's hitting sound real hard in these next gen demos.
I'm really starting to wonder if I need to like upgrade my system. Like I have.
Here's the thing: the sound on this one isn't really about upgrading the system so much as how they can, in real time, make the sounds sound like they belong in the world they're in. Like it's stuff like it's little subtle things like the sound of the flapping bat wings reverberating off the cave, and you can hear that, and it makes it feel like it has a sense of place, but you don't have to do that like by hand.
You don't have to fake it. Yeah, because that's what they do generally. Like if you're inside, they'll just like slap an echo or something or a delay on
like
the
this
audio.
is the big like thing, and they call it out several times in the demos, and none of it's pre-baked. Like you just put it in and it works. And this is like similar tech, I think, to what you're seeing if you watch the behind the scenes stuff on The Mandalorian. Where they are using Unreal tech to basically generate the world in real time as they shoot the show on a green screen set. Like it's that kind of thing, that, and I think it's similar kind of the ability to just sort of bring your CAD stuff and bring your photogrammetry right into it and just have it work. That's crazy. Like that's a workflow streamline.
Oh yeah,
that like
absolutely.
That addresses the thing we've talked about, where it's like as these things get higher and higher in terms of like fidelity and visual detail. How the hell do you afford to pay people to work on this thing for the number of years it's going to take to make all that happen?
Yep.
But here's Epic coming in and being like, oh, like you just import it. Like you just do it. And it's like where they talk about that statue, like that's a great reveal. And like the developer friends I have that I talked about it with, were like that statue where they're like, oh, this is a 17 million triangle statue, and we just brought it right in. You can run lighting over it. It's amazing. And oh, by the way, here's a room with like
here's a room full of them. Yeah,
and it's just they're just like, what the like it's really impressive. Like it's a very exciting demo from a tech standpoint and from a kind of pipeline standpoint.
Now, so you said that you don't think games are going to look that good. I do. I think they'll look better than that. And I hope that they do, because I want more out of Gen 9 than what we saw there.
I mean, eventually you'll get some optimization tricks and stuff, but I'm thinking about how, like, demos like this do tend to be kind of an idealized situation. You don't need to have all the other things running under the hood that make a game a game. Like this is very, you're basically just pushing up in this demo. And
look, you're in one regard, you're right, because if you go back and look at prior Unreal demos, the games have never ended up looking as good as that.
Even the early Gears of War stuff, where they were showing it and not admitting it was Gears of War, just saying like, "Oh, it's just some monsters we made."
Epic project. So, Matt, do you think maybe in the future, though, that these demos that we see, maybe the actual games will end up looking a little bit closer to what we're seeing in the demos?
I mean, probably games inevitably look better as the generation continues. Like I would say Gears of War 3 on the 360 more or less looks as good as the initial GDC demos for the Unreal Engine 3.
Agreed.
It gets there. And also like this demo is like we're not seeing like really a beautiful design here beyond like the statues.
Yeah, the art is like whatever.
Like the point is not to like wow you with the art directions, because it's mostly just like, oh, that's the most beautiful rock wall I've ever seen. Not really. It's more like it's impressive that it can fool your eye into thinking it's real more than it's a triumph of art design, right? Mm-hmm. And also like, so what we see in this is like, okay, Unreal Engine 5 is really good at natural rock and stone and carved details. Like, what do trees look like?
Yeah, what do human? I mean, let's be honest. What do humans look like?
That's the other thing. Like, I know they're not trying to do that, but like, I don't think the character looks all that good.
Exactly.
Her clothes do,
and they do hide her a lot, so you can't really like see her face and her facial expressions.
But when like at the end, when it pans around to her face before she goes into the portal, I'm like, that looks like Cameo. Like, I'm so, that's not impressive facial animation or facial design. Like, which is obviously not the point. There might be another demo coming where they show what actual characters can look like. But my point is kind of like this demo showed us a really cool like kind of tech demo of pipeline ideas and what you can import and how the lighting works. But all it showed us in terms of sort of like aesthetics is rocks.
Yeah.
And so we don't know what space looks like or what trees look like or what a city would look like. There's a lot more that we can see in the future from this that will kind of educate us more on what this engine's strengths are. And because remember, Unreal's always been cutting edge, and been part of the best. But there was also that period where they just couldn't do hair. And like,
oh yeah, I mean the gears. I mean that's why everyone was bald in a lot of Unreal games back in the 360 era.
Yeah, everybody loved the cornrows for a while. It was
it's pretty funny.
Because the cornrows, you could just like plaster it as a texture on their head, but then you could have it hang and it physics. Like that was the whole point.
Now, Matt, you said earlier, and I wasn't aware of this, and I'm glad that you brought it up. You said that Epic had come out and said that this runs just fine on Xbox Series X as well.
Yeah.
Do you think that came from Microsoft, or do you think that Epic took it upon itself to get that disclaimer out there?
I believe that was one of the Epic team guys responding to questions on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
It was a Jeff Keighley question. He was asking he specifically was asking in regards to the power and saying like these consoles are slightly different. What advantages does one have over the other? And they basically said, "We love both our children," was their exact answer. So they really didn't say anything about it.
So wait, did they specifically say though that it runs just as well on Series X, or did they just say that we love both our children?
The thing I read said like
if they said that specifically.
Okay.
The thing I read said that he said specifically like it runs just the same on Xbox.
Okay, so it was solicited from Keighley. It wasn't that they were being proactive or Microsoft reached out.
No, they were answering a question.
Yeah.
I didn't see it was from Keighley, but I did see that it was an answer to something they'd been asked.
Yeah, and at the same time, I'm not surprised by that at all. Like that's what I expected. I think that's what most people expected. The story here is that a lot of people didn't expect that PlayStation 5 could run the same stuff that Xbox Series X could.
Well, that was if they thought that they're dumb or they don't know what they're looking at, because there was never it was going to be a matter of weird ticky, even with the teraflops don't really mean anything because they mean different things depending on what hardware configuration you're working with. But like, it has been always very clear as soon as we started seeing details from like Cerny on this thing, like the difference was not going to be something you could tell without Digital Foundry's help. Probably, but it was going to be real close.
Yeah, so you don't foresee this being another like PS3, Xbox 360 situation.
Not a chance.
We're out of the gate. The games on PlayStation 5, you can definitely see that they don't look quite as good and they don't run quite as well. You don't see that happening this time?
I don't see any reason why that would be a thing, unless there's some element to how PlayStation's architecture works that is inconvenient in the way the PS3 was. And the multi-platform developers just don't feel like taking the time to optimize for it, or don't have the money or the time to optimize for it, which is the problem with the PS3 was everyone I know who was in dev at that time doing multi-platform stuff just did not have the freaking time or the money in some cases. Like Ubisoft was not interested in optimizing shit for the cell processor. Like they're like, get it to work. And that's okay, especially because for a long time, there was no reason to, because 360 was so far ahead that you weren't going to make any ground up in sales by putting more money and time into making it run equally good on the PS3. I don't see that being the case with this generation because I think the PS5 is going to sell crazy. So I think it's going to be a very close race this time. And it wasn't in the 360 PS3 generation, in part because the Wii was so far ahead, no one was paying attention. But and eventually the PS3 did win, like in a long 10-year run. Yeah. Like they sold more units in the end, total. But the 360 was in charge to that whole generation between the two of those systems.
I mean, it may have sold more consoles, but the Xbox 360 was the console to own.
It was the zeitgeist, And remember, I can only think of one multi-platform game that runs better on PS3, and that's Burnout
probably
Paradise.
Came in like the last couple years when
it's Burnout Paradise.
Yeah,
Burnout Paradise has slightly better sparks, I believe, and it runs a little better. Like that was maybe that was Burnout 3. It was one of the Burnouts. One of the Burnouts runs better on PS3, and that's the only one I think I can recall.
Yep. Is it safe to say, I'll speak for myself right now, when I say that seeing this demo has increased my interest and hopes in PlayStation 5. Would you guys agree with that? Matt first.
No, I think mine's about, I never doubted that PS5 was going to have this kind of capability. Unreal Engine 5 looks amazing in this demo, but it also kind of looks like what I was expecting this new generation to look like. And so far we had kind of been denied that. And it was like, oh, okay, well, Epic's going to step in and do that. I have no doubt that that's pretty much what Sony's first party stuff's going to look like. Probably on different engines, but I don't see any reason why you wouldn't. Sony has always exploited its own hardware better than anyone else. I don't see any reason why that would be a problem. I think this is the first time I've seen anything that really made me go, okay, yeah, that's what I've been waiting for. Like where were you? And that includes that Xbox Insider.
Yeah,
thing.
for sure. Yeah. Yep. What about you, Mitch? How are you feeling about PS5 after the real reveal of Unreal Engine 5?
I feel the same. I mean, I was similar where I wasn't down after looking at the specs of what this PlayStation 5 was going to be able to do. I think this overall is an excellent way to show next generation. This is what Microsoft should have did last week. And I think, I may have said it wrong when I was talking about Microsoft last week in regards to showing off the games at the best possible fidelity. This kind of shows in a sense of, because Microsoft has to up-res everything from Xbox One, that games may not look this good on Xbox One, and maybe that's why there's such a stark difference.
You mean on Xbox Series X?
Correct, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
And that's why there might be a stark difference. And that's why maybe this shows off a little bit better because there is such detail. Heck, they literally said they could take rocks from the Lion King animated movie, which is a phenomenal digital masterpiece of technology, and they can just import it right in. They don't have to down-res it. They don't have to color over the textures. There's so much.
The Toy Story is finally here, is what you're saying. It was supposed to happen with PlayStation 3, but finally, I think in real time, we could probably get the first Toy Story at this point.
Absolutely. And I just think this blows everything out of the water that we've seen from next generation. This is next gen. Like, that's the first time I've ever believed that this is what something could really be.
Yep. So it sounds like all three of us agree that it definitely did not hurt PlayStation 5.
No, and I also would say, I would say that like part of the problem was with the stuff that was shown in the Xbox Insider thing. They're kind of C-listers.
Yeah. Like we talked about that.
Those are all games from companies I don't expect to look like this Unreal demo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like there's always going to be, not everything's going to be Last of Us 2.
Yep.
Visual fidelity wise. And so now we're, Unreal
I would
5
argue they should have shown their equivalent though, instead of showing. They
probably should have, but I mean, there's also there's something to be said for getting that out of the way. And I mean, Microsoft must have known that this was coming. Like clearly Microsoft has seen Unreal Engine 5. They've probably seen that demo many times. Like they knew it was coming. There's an element now, having seen this, of like, were they just getting that out of the way? So that when Unreal Engine 5 gets shown, the next thing Xbox comes out of the gate with has got to be a fucking jaw dropper. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what Halo looks like. Like Halo Infinite better blow my fucking eyeballs out of my head. Like after that, like so.
Especially after it's been 5 years or something since they started working on it. Like it better blow our doors off.
And after it took how long to get Master Chief Collection just in shape,
like playable,
right? Like 4 years to get that thing to work properly. Yeah. And I know that wasn't 343's entire fault because they outsourced it, but you did outsource it. So,
that's true.
Microsoft, I think the Xbox will sell very well. I think the Xbox will be, a contender, but like, there's no question that Microsoft is the one on the back foot right now. Yep. Like they have to show the goods next time they try anything.
Yep, and it looks like it won't be that long because they're having that big first-party blowout here in the very near future. So looks like we'll be able to get a look at the very best that Microsoft will have to offer for Xbox Series X very soon. And based upon some news reports that we're getting right now, it sounds like the same thing's going to happen for Sony real soon. Yeah. The president of Sony Corporate in their earnings report just said that get ready because we're about to start showing our first-party stuff for PS5.
Well, there's more rumors swirling about Alan Wake.
That's right. Yeah. And, I mean, that's pretty much confirmed at this point.
Pretty much. And let's not forget, I mean, I know Konami said, but Silent Hill, people.
Yeah.
Here we go.
That would be a good one to get as an exclusive because Konami's not going to do anything with it. You could pay them a small amount of money. You could put a good team on it, and it's just going to have built-in interest right out of the gate.
And it kind of fills a gap in Sony's first-party lineup. They don't have a lot of horror to speak of.
And that is the platform that series was birthed and thrived on. So it makes a lot of sense. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up. I'm glad that we're going to be here to share it with you guys. All right. It's time to move on.
Where's Batman?
Exactly. Well, I guess you saw that WB Montreal just said it's going to be a while still.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing up there, man. It's crazy.
You'd think they'd have that formula down, but
you think.
Because look, I get it. You don't want to just keep repeating yourself, but it's like I would play one of those Batman games if you just cranked one out every 2 years and didn't really change a whole lot. Like
2 years is good. That's enough time where you're okay playing kind of that same template over.
Yeah,
I've
played 14 Assassin's Creed games in the last 13 years. Like, I'll play an Arkham game every couple of years. Like,
yep.
It's so weird.
Yep, I hear you. All right, it's time to move on to our Q&A. Really sharp viewers may have figured out that things are looking different here at the end of the show, and that's because yesterday we were in the last topic of the show, and it was really windy here in Los Angeles, and the wind knocked out the power back at our studio. And we waited for a while to see if it would come back up. It didn't. It didn't come on until like 9 o'clock last night. So we had to wait until the next day to record the end of this. But the good news is you guys are really sharp and you were on it. And you guys put questions into the chat anyway, knowing that we were going to need them for the end of the show. So thank you guys very much. Very smart of you guys to do that. And it's a huge help for us. So here's the first one. This is from Spectre of Madness. Have any of you played the new Bloodstained update? What are your opinions?
I have not.
I haven't either. And I am starting to realize I am getting into this loop of playing games, getting to the last boss, fighting the last boss like 10 times, and then quitting. And that game, I did that. I never could beat the end boss. And it also just happened with me with Gears Tactics. I have been at the end of Gears Tactics, and I almost actually did a Shane shit list on this on Sifted HQ. Goofy save systems. The end boss in Gears Tactics is a multi-part boss. His health meter has 3 segments. Every time you complete a full segment, it gives you a checkpoint. And so I am on the last segment, and I have a checkpoint right before the last segment, but it is basically impossible for me to beat the boss because I have guys who are in compromising positions. I don't have any healing spells, quote unquote, to use, and I'm just trapped. But I refuse to go back and start the boss fight all over again because it's literally like an hour long. So I got to that third segment, got the checkpoint, and I just keep trying over and over and over and over. And I will say this, I have found that the game does not do the same thing every time. It does actually take into account what's happening, and it adjusts its tactics based on that. So every once in a while, I always have to start by throwing a grenade and blowing up 2 enemies. It's like my best move. It's really the only move I can do at the checkpoint. And then after that, like you see what the AI does. And 4 times out of 5, it does do the same thing. But that 5th time, it will do something different and will give me a chance. And then 30 minutes later, I die. And I have done it over and over and over again. And so I don't think I'm ever going to go back and finish it now. I've just kind of given up on it. And that's what happened for me with Bloodstained. I got to the end boss. I fought it a bunch of times. I wasn't able to beat it. I thought it was a little cheap and janky. And so I just never went back and finished the game.
I'm not that far in that. But,
yeah.
I liked what I saw of the notes of the update, but it'll be a long time before I get around to it.
I'm glad that they updated it at all. I mean, it was one of the best indie games from last year. And they could have just been like, it was a long road getting that game done. So I could have seen that team being like, it's done, we're done. I am pleasantly surprised that they continued working on the game and have released some new content. So kudos to them, but I have not had a chance to actually give it a whirl. Mitch, did you ever play Bloodstained?
No.
Okay. Next up, JM Rain 99. What movies or non-video games have kept you occupied during COVID? Mitch, go first.
I would say there is a show I was watching on Netflix. Oh God, it's not the Forgotten Kingdom. I'll double check it while you guys are talking, but it's basically like a Chinese Asian film back in the time of swords and kind of Ghost of Tsushima time. But there's an outbreak and there's zombies. And it's just a really interesting
take on the zombie film.
Yeah, I really like it. And then there's also about a prince and he's supposed to take over the throne, but there's like politics involved.
I think it's just called Kingdom.
That's what it is. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
It is,
yeah, I've heard of that. It's good.
2 seasons right now, and there is a setup, and they have confirmed a 3rd season. I've been enjoying that.
Okay. What about you, Matt?
Well, I rewatched all of Clone Wars because the season 7 was ending, and that was fine. And then I watched The Good Place, which I'd never seen before. That was really good. I would probably say it's one of the top 10 TV shows I've ever seen.
Wow.
Really, really good.
Oh, well, I'm going to watch that immediately.
And
a
now,
recommendation like that from you? Done.
It's very funny and it's very smart. And
wow.
it's it gets very touching at times. Like it's exceptionally good.
Wow.
It's extraordinarily good. And I'm currently rewatching Rebels, follow up on Clone Wars. And then I will probably watch Avatar: The Last Airbender now that it's on Netflix, because I haven't seen that the next thing I will watch is either Avatar or Babylon 5.
Okay. For me, I haven't really watched anything. Like after Ozark I finished that. I haven't really dove into anything. There's a couple TV shows that I watch. Like I'm a sucker for those gold shows like Gold Rush and Bering Sea Gold. They are my guilty pleasure TV shows. I don't know why I love them so much.
You're from Pennsylvania. You secretly want to be a miner.
I don't know. I don't know why I love them so much. But the way they do those shows, they stagger them. So Gold Rush will happen. And as soon as that ends, then Bering Sea Gold starts. And it just goes all year long. So I do watch those, but I haven't really dove into any viewing. I just watched 1917 the other night. I was kind of disappointed in that. It was okay. But for the most part, I have really dove into my old life again. The last 5 years, I have just basically completely ignored everything that made me who I was. I'll be perfectly honest with you. All my hobbies that I enjoyed outside of gaming, everything. It was just all cut off because I have to spend so much time just trying to keep Sifted alive. I just don't have time for my hobbies. But with the coronavirus, it isn't that I have more time. It's that the time that I used to spend watching sports that I would like carve out an hour and a half here, an hour and a half there to watch. I don't spend that time doing that anymore. And I will say this too. I have been really shocked that I have not missed sports more than I have. Like right now, the Stanley Cup playoffs would be going on. Maybe the Penguins would be going for another cup. After a week, after sports ended, it was just kind of like the Penguins being eliminated. And it sucked for the first couple days, and then I went on with my life. And so I have started DJing a lot again. Like all my friends who are in the electronic music scene, they've all been doing live streams on. And in fact, I've tweeted a couple of them on my Twitter feed. They've all been doing live streams because they can't make any money. So they'll stream on Twitch and they'll ask for donations or whatever. And just supporting them and being on the stream with them and my friends and just chatting, I've got totally back into playing house music again, like hardcore. So there's been a lot. I've been able to spend a lot more time with my wife. It's been a revelation for me, to be honest with you. I really thought losing sports was going to like crush me, and it really has had almost zero impact. And I know a lot of people do not feel that way. There's a lot of people out there that are desperately trying to get sports to start again at, I would say, the cost of American lives. And that's something I will never abide by. So if we can get sports going again, I'll be there. I mean, I'll definitely watch the Steelers play this season, but I have not missed it as much as I have, and I have not filled the time with a lot of media consumption. It's been more getting back to kind of the person that I've always been throughout my life. So it has been an interesting period of time for me, for sure.
No, on the sports thing, I don't know if you saw, but that marble racing thing I kept talking about.
Yeah.
It's like on John Oliver.
John Oliver talked about it this week, and John Oliver's show is sponsoring the entire league.
No way.
Tens of thousands of dollars, and
That's
like
awesome.
donating to charity. Like everyone, whatever marbles win, they're donating like thousands to charity in the name of the marble.
That's great.
And like, they're going all in on the marble racing. So I'm like,
I didn't get to watch it this week. That's another thing.
I'm very happy to like have called that one early on.
I was going to talk to you about that because I saw that and I was like, that's Matt. Matt talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to watch the show this week, so I totally missed that. And that's the other thing, like, because I'm not spending a lot of time in front of the TV watching Netflix or TV shows or whatever, I miss a lot of other stuff that's like building up on my DVR. So that's one show that I haven't got to watch yet, but that's great. That show always finds a way to do good things in a unique way.
Yeah, I watch that stuff on like YouTube usually. I don't use a lot of DVR anymore. Like last night I watched a lecture about ancient European history while I was mining asteroids in Elite Dangerous because I'm that cool. So
I will say one. Well, actually, Shane, John Oliver talks about sports this week. So
yeah, that's the whole show is sports.
It's sports.
The absence of sports.
I did see that on YouTube actually, and I just haven't got a chance to watch it yet.
But I would say my favorite show so far this year I've watched is actually Upload on Amazon. It's very, very good. I
never watch
recommend it.
anything on Amazon.
I
have
don't
Prime.
either, but
I always go and I look around there and I'm like, these shows all look terrible. Like I
forget I have it.
Yeah, I do too. I gave up after a while. I used to go every month and just check and see what their new shows were, what movies they had there. And after like 6 months in a row of being like, meh, like I just stopped going. I quit. So
my friend texted me and had a similar moment of Matt's Clone Wars, but had a Upload. And I was like, what the heck is that? And watched it. And I literally got through the whole season in one sitting. I couldn't stop. It was that good.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Next up from, I don't know how to pronounce this guy. It's either Signtyke or Cinetyke. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe next week you can correct me. The new console's SSDs and their new integration in the system are reported to enable faster loading and new paradigms in how games are loaded, streamed as we play. However, Series X, PS5, and PC will all be different. So in a multi-platform game, how can it make use of innovations when one of those platforms could not be fast enough for it? This is a great question. Will console exclusives be the only ones to truly see the new paradigms in game loading and streaming? Great question. I think we may have actually broached.
We had a similar one last week. It comes down to you're going to have to make PC owners buy SSDs.
Yeah.
And to be honest, fine.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
That's sort of part of the deal. I think PC gamers know that that's sort of part of the deal. Like you're going to be buying hardware, you're going to be buying upgrades. It's
going to be worth it too. I mean, the advancements you're going to get to gaming because you have an SSD, I think will convince most PC owners to do it.
Yeah, and I think most PC owners already have an SSD of some kind.
They were the pioneers of SSD.
So, and there's been, plenty of PC gamers have been complaining that the consoles not having them have held them back. So I don't think that's going to be a huge problem. I think most PC gamers that have upgraded, like the hardcore, already have SSDs they're running stuff off of because it does make a difference. And even my system I built 5 years ago has one in it for that. And now you'd be nuts not to put a pretty good sized SSD in a gaming rig.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be an issue, really.
I would say every build I've ever seen so far has always said have SSD.
For your operating system, there is no question.
Yeah.
It will change everything. Yeah.
And,
but I think you're going to want to have a separate SSD for game installations, too.
For storage.
Yeah. And also, Shane, his name is Cinetic. I only know this because he sent me 4 pages of notes on a Google Doc about PC building. So I appreciate it, Cinetic. Thank you so much.
Yep, that's awesome. Next question and last question from Mike's Q. And this is another good one. How long do you think Nintendo will wait until after the Gen 9 launch to bring out their own next SKU? Either a Switch Pro or Switch 2? Matt, start.
I would say a Switch Pro is probably next year.
You think it's next year?
Yeah. I think that the next system...
Like Switch 2.
Switch 2? 2022? 23? It's a ways out, I think. Because I think the Switch is rolling just fine. And I think the difference...
Sold out everywhere, still.
Yeah, I think the difference... The thing that really determines that, I think, is going to be whether the third-party support really dries up, like you were talking about earlier in the show. Mm-hmm. And they aren't getting any ports anymore. They aren't getting any support. No one wants to make Switch-specific games. If you need to upgrade to a new model that basically can handle current-gen tech, that might be what really pokes Nintendo to do that. But I would say right now, if you're looking at kind of the market and going forward and how things are rolling, they don't need a new system yet. A Pro, maybe. A Pro would, I would buy like a non-portable, like just hooked to the TV, more powerful Pro. I would buy that day one. But I don't think you need to Switch 2 just yet. And I think they would probably agree with that because they can't make them fast enough to get them to people. So like right now, you don't need to worry about it yet. I think we got 2 or 3 years.
Okay. Mitch, what's your take?
Probably I'm going late 2021. Because
for which?
For I don't think a Switch Pro is happening.
You don't think it'll ever happen?
No, I don't think it won't. I really think they're just going to have to upgrade the entire console because, as we've seen, this next gen looks so good. And as Matt said, he took the words from my mouth, which is they're going to run out of third-party support, and that's something that is really appealing to people. So I think it would be really interesting if maybe they actually made something to match the standard of Microsoft and Sony. It would be really interesting to see how they change the gameplay with all those tools available to them.
I would love to see them do that, but they will never do that.
Exactly.
Like, I would love to see Nintendo catch back up technologically, but that is just not their wheelhouse anymore.
Not what they do. I personally think that I think there will be a Switch Pro. And I think there will be a Switch Pro because I agree with Matt that I don't see Nintendo bailing on Switch for a long time. Like a long time, because it's way too successful. And I think even as the third-party stuff starts to dry up, I think Nintendo will just shift gears and provide some more first-party stuff to try to fill the gaps. I also would say that best case scenario this fall for Switch Pro. It's been rumored for a really long time, which means that they could or could not have been working on it for a long time, and it's the perfect time this fall for them to release it. So if there is going to be
it would be a good thing to have out there for people who don't want to spend $500 on a new system.
A better Switch, absolutely. And it's still, people are still going to want it in 5 or 6 months. So if it is going to happen, I think it happens this fall. I do believe it is going to happen. Switch 2, I think even 2022 might be a little generous, but I think that's probably the earliest that we're going to get it. It's just too much of a
certainly
hit.
The earliest we'll hear of it, I think.
Yeah, it's just Switch is just too much of a hit. I mean, in all honesty, Nintendo would be a moron to bail on it. It's proven over and over again that a lot of people don't really give a crap about whether Nintendo's games look as good as Sony's or Microsoft's. So
yeah, and I think Sony, the PS5 probably didn't need to happen as soon as it's happening.
No,
but I think you're forced into it because Microsoft did need the new Xbox to happen, and you can't be left in the dust on that. Nintendo doesn't have any competition pushing it like that. The only thing that could give them outside pressure for that is the lack of third-party support. And quite frankly, because of the attach rates on old games, people being willing to buy BioShock for a 5th time so they can have a portable version.
Yeah.
Okay. Not what I want, but as long as that mentality still exists around Switch owners, like there's zero reason to move on to a new system yet. Like as long as people are willing to make like these quick and dirty ports of ancient games, let's be honest, ancient games, and they sell like that, done.
Why would you
just
quit?
Free money. It's just free money.
It is. You're printing money.
Yeah, the only enemy for Nintendo is themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it always has been. It always has been. It has always been its own worst enemy. It's just the way it is. So, all right. So there you go.
Even going back to the birth of the PlayStation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Literally created the PlayStation.
It did. It created its competitor. It's mind-boggling. All right, so that's going to do it for GameFace episode 212. Again, really sorry for this archive getting to you guys late. It was completely out of our control, and we did the best we could to finish the show and get it uploaded to you guys as quickly as possible. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can find Matt at MKyle. That's MKEIL. You can find Mitch at Mitch Sikor, SIKOR. I am Dinfire, DINFIRE. And you can find Sifted at Sifted Games. We are 100% supported by Patreon. So if you're listening to this in the far-flung regions of the internet, it'd be great if you go to patreon.com/sifted and kick us some dollars for every month if you're liking what we're doing. And if you can't do that, you can always help us out with Twitch Prime, which is very easy. You just link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account and then subscribe to our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/siftedgames. And you give us a free $2.50 every month. And we really rely on that, and we appreciate everyone who's doing it. So things are about to start heating up, folks. We'll be back next week. We'll be talking about Maneater, which is an open world GTA shark game, which I've been playing for the last few days.
Oh, here it comes.
Yep. June is looking like awesome with all the crazy events replacing E3. Things are about to start kicking into gear for 2020 here. And we really appreciate that you guys are going to be alongside us for the ride. So with that, we'll see you guys next Tuesday on Twitch at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. GameFace is up and out.